Chapter 1340. Enlin's words sent Shuizhantian into a climax. All of the other teachers and students, as well as the immortals from the celestial court, were also filled with excitement. Around Fatty yelled with excitement, "Mr. Enlin, cut the crap and show the ignorant world your peerless alchemy skills." Enlin looked at Ishi, who was several times larger than Shuizhantian, and he was struck by the urge to beat him up. "Create a good atmosphere. You're not going to be defeated here." Ishi's words had already created a heated discussion among the immortals, teachers, and students. "Say, what is alchemy? Could it be that Enlin is so powerful because he's cultivating in an unprecedented alchemy? Ah, that explains why he was so powerful during his battle against the heavenly wind god, as if he had taken a pill. He really did take a pill, and the pill he ingested was a core that was created within his body after cultivating in the Tao of alchemy. That makes sense. This is why he's using a divine pill to make a breakthrough. Alchemists are so terrifying." All of the onlookers instantly came to a realization, and expressions of amazement and envy appeared on their faces as they stared at Enlin. Enlin ignored everyone who had been led astray and swallowed the rainbow divine Tao pill right before everyone's eyes before activating his magic power to expend the pill's power. Boom! Powerful pill power instantly filled every corner of his body. The rainbow divine Tao pill contained 7 different types of power, yin, yang, and the 5 elements, as well as the power of the moon that was unique to Chang'e, thereby encompassing almost all of the elements in this world. His body of the war god was extremely fond of the power of divine pills, and his divine body had clearly improved even though he hadn't made a breakthrough yet. Ding dong! Detected that host has completed cultivation base mission, now progressing to the return to void stage. The system's voice sounded. Kacha. A crisp crack erupted, as if a certain shackle had been broken. Vital energy instantly surged for several dozen kilometers, several hundred kilometers, several thousand kilometers. It was noon when the sun was at its peak. Thick, dark clouds covered the entire world, and one couldn't see the end of it. Look, fellow Taoist Enlin has indeed begun to break through after eating the divine pill. He really is cultivating the Tao of alchemy. He's my first teacher. Ishi's face was flushed red as he yelled with excitement, and his entire body trembled. Chang'e couldn't help but chuckle as she looked at Ishi. I wonder how Elder Lord Lao Zi would feel after hearing his disciple, Ishi, say this. At this moment, the dark clouds in the sky surged like a whirlpool. At the center of the whirlpool was Enlin. The rumbling thunder was like the roar of an ancient giant beast. A heavenly might descended from the sky, causing everyone to hold their breaths. Is God N's breakthrough going to cause such a huge commotion right from the start? It's so scary. Even though I'm watching the battle from the sidelines, I still feel a sense of trepidation. The white-scaled wolf god and Shuizhantian clearly didn't make breakthroughs like this. I'm suspecting that the tribulation transcendence I saw earlier was fake. All of the students were expressing their own opinions. Most of them were saying that they were scared, but they were actually extremely excited as they stared at Enlin with scorching light in their eyes. All of them knew that the real show was yet to come. This was only a warm-up. Sure enough, bolts of golden lightning tore through the dark clouds like dragons, lighting up heaven and earth. Over 10,000 bolts of terrifying golden void lightning appeared in the sky at the same time. Dazzling light and roaring thunder. Enlin stood at the center of the whirlpool and looked up at the golden void lightning with a disappointed expression. Is this all my tribulation lightning is going to be like this? That's way too weak. It's not even as exciting as my tribulation transcendence to the soul formation stage. A tribulation lightning of this caliber didn't reflect his status in the slightest. However, he wasn't a flashy person, so he wasn't going to point at the sky and say, "Do you dare me?" It would naturally be best if he could safely transcend the tribulation lightning. and Lin was just grumbling in his heart when an extremely dazzling bolt of golden void lightning fell from the sky. Boom! An earth-shattering boom erupted. What followed was an extremely fearsome explosion. Countless bolts of lightning wreaked havoc within Lin's body. It's coming down! It's golden void lightning! Everyone let loose cries of surprise upon seeing the lightning in the sky. This first bolt of lightning feels very mundane. It really is too mundane. Shouldn't it transform or change its elemental attribute or something? This doesn't reflect God and's badass at all. I refuse to accept this. Some of the students were already yelling at Lin. It was quite clear that many of the students were thinking the same thing as Lin, however, and Lin wanted to beg them to stop talking. Wasn't it a good thing that his tribulation lightning wasn't bad *SS? Why did they have to be dissatisfied with this? Boom! Another bolt of golden void lightning fell from the sky. As the terrifying lightning wreaked havoc within Lin's body, it was also forging his body and consciousness. And Kieran was also absorbing the energy of the golden void lightning with elation in his sea of vital energy. This type of tribulation lightning was very satisfying. It was very useful, and it wasn't dangerous at all. And Lin smiled. This type of tribulation lightning was a good type of tribulation lightning. At this moment, in the clouds that no one could see, the 5 emperors stared at the tribulation transcendence unfolding before their eyes with astonishment. This is just an ordinary golden void lightning? Aside from the fact that it's much more powerful than the average cultivator, there doesn't seem to be anything special about it. Emperor Ziwei was a little perplexed. The fact that the tribulation lightning didn't change was even more astonishing to them than the fact that it did. This tribulation lightning was way too normal. This shouldn't be the case. Last time, the soul formation stage tribulation lightning was already golden void lightning, and it was even a golden void lightning Kieran. This time, the return to void stage tribulation lightning is nothing special. The celestial Dharch was also struggling to accept this. We came here to cheer for Lin, and this is all you're going to show us? There's no need to rush. 81 bolts of golden void lightning, and that's only the beginning. Emperor Qing Hua quickly accepted this reality, and he stroked his beard with a smile on his face as he looked on at the unfolding events. Boom, boom, boom. One bolt of terrifying golden void lightning after another tore through space before crashing into Lin's body. Lin could sense the pure and powerful lightning power within it, as well as the spatial power that emanated from the golden void lightning as it tore through space. That special spatial power fused into his body and resonated with it, giving him a sense of space. This was not a sense of direction or space, but a true sense of space. This was the 7th sense after the 6 senses of shape, sound, smell, taste, touch, and spirit. Space. The world was instantly different, and Lin could sense the existence of space, and it was as if he had jumped out of another dimension. At the same time, he felt as if he had been reborn, as if he had been blinded and had reopened his eyes. This was a brand new world. So this is what space is like. A faint smile appeared on Lin's face as he pointed a finger into the air. A burst of spatial fluctuations rippled forth into boundless distance before merging into heaven and earth. Space was now within Lin's reach. Chapter 1341. Lin was completely immersed in the joy of attaining spatial awareness. The golden void lightning continued to fall. His understanding of spatial awareness became more and more profound. He also gradually began to master the use of spatial power. Everything was going very smoothly, so smoothly that he didn't feel like he was transcending a tribulation. Instead, he felt like he was using lightning to cultivate. As expected of Lin, even the heavens are helping him in his cultivation. How amazing! Chang Yi couldn't help but burst into laughter at the sight of Lin's elated expression during his tribulation transcendence. Perhaps it's because Master knows that idiot and can control divine lightning, so he gave up on struggling and admitted defeat? Jade Rabbit guessed as she ate potato chips in Chong-Yi's arms. Chong-Yi's eyes lit up and she nodded, "Little you, you're right." Meanwhile, at the summit of Pan Long Mountain, Enlin stood alone in his white robe as he faced the terrifying bolts of golden void lightning. He had already endured 70 of the 81 bolts of golden void lightning. In the sky above, the golden void lightning was becoming more and more fearsome. Each and every bolt of lightning could easily shatter space and shine through the dark clouds in the sky. However, this was still a piece of cake for Enlin, who possessed a divine body. One had to realize that Enlin's body of the war god was so thick that even if he lay flat on the ground, a return to void stage mighty figure might not be able to cut through his thick skin. Enlin's tribulation transcendence is going very smoothly. It's fine as long as it's going to be ordinary, but it doesn't have to be earth-shattering. Su Xiaolan heaved a sigh of relief as a relaxed smile appeared on her face at the sight of Enlin transcending his tribulation. She felt like nothing was more important than Enlin's safety. To be able to pass the tribulation peacefully and successfully was the most ideal result in her heart. The golden void lightning became more and more fearsome, and after 70 bolts of lightning, many return to void stage celestial immortals were struck by a sense of asphyxiation. Before they knew it, the 80th bolt of tribulation lightning fell. Even Erling Shen and Chong-Yi's expressions shifted upon seeing this. Just the shockwaves unleashed by the bolts of lightning struck Enlin's body caused the peak of Pan Long Mountain to sink by several hundred meters. Enlin's aura had become extremely powerful and ethereal, and his eyes had become the color of the sky, reflecting everything in this world. Metal, wood, water, fire, earth, wind, lightning, yin and yang. 9 vast and profound powers circulated in his divine body, absorbing the golden void heavenly lightning in his body and refining his divine body. He wasn't afraid of tribulation lightning, and he didn't even use his lightning manipulation technique. He was able to withstand the tribulation lightning with his own strength. Come, let me witness the power of the final bolt of tribulation lightning. Enlin looked up into the sky as he murmured to himself. Tens of thousands of bolts of golden void lightning tore through the dark clouds in the sky, bearing their terrifying claws and fangs to the world. Bolts of lightning fell from the sky, striking fear into the hearts of onlookers. An extremely thick bolt of golden void lightning appeared, as if it were the king of golden void lightning. The golden lightning was as bright as the sun, illuminating the dark clouds in the sky. Sizzle! Kacha! The space within a radius of over a kilometer crumbled as it was unable to withstand the might of this bolt of lightning. All of the immortals in the celestial court drew a sharp intake of breath upon seeing this. If this bolt of lightning were to fall upon them, all mighty figures below the return to void final stage would undoubtedly be reduced to ashes. Now that's what a supremely talented tribulation transcendence should look like. The celestial Thearcha's eyes lit up. Enlin was also getting excited. Even though it was a good thing that he was able to transcend the tribulation safely, he felt like something was missing. He knew now that he was right, what he was missing was this feeling of excitement. Tribulation lightning that could threaten his life was the true tribulation lightning. However, this was only a threat to him. He was confident that he could transcend this tribulation. Ha ha! Come, let me see your power. Enlin chortled with glee as his battle-intent soared, as if he were a war god standing proudly on the summit of a mountain. In the sky above, the king of golden void lightning roared with rage as the thick bolt of lightning condensed and shrank, but its power became even more terrifying, just as everyone was looking up at the bolt of lightning in the sky with bated breath. The final bolt of golden void lightning moved. Whoosh! It pierced through space and descended from the sky with boundless lightning might and the wrath of the heavens. Goosebumps appeared all over Enlin's body in that instant. It was as if this bolt of lightning was the only color between heaven and earth. Both the sky and the earth were dyed with a boundless golden light. Regardless of whether it was Lin or the spectators, everyone was extremely nervous at this moment. And then, pfff thump, it was as if something had deflated. The golden void lightning between heaven and earth suddenly disappeared. Everyone was dumbstruck upon seeing this. And Lin was also dumbstruck. All of a sudden, the scene before his eyes blurred. The king of golden void lightning had disappeared, but for some reason, that unique spatial power had already enveloped Lin's entire body. Immediately afterward, whoosh, Lin's body disappeared without a trace. The proud figure on the summit of Pan Long Mountain had disappeared. All the onlookers were stunned. Deathly silence ensued. After a short while, Where's senior student Lin? My God, where did Godden go? Tens of thousands of students and teachers stared blankly at the scenes unfolding before their eyes. Not only were the students and teachers dumbstruck, but even the immortals of the celestial court were also dumbstruck. What happened? Where did Mr. Lin go? Gasp. He couldn't have been blasted into nothingness by the golden void lightning, could he? Don't spout nonsense. Mr. Lin is the war god of the celestial court. How could he just disappear like that? That's right, war god Lin is blessed by the heavens. All of the immortals discussed spiritedly among themselves, but they were still extremely perplexed. But he really has disappeared. Could it be that Lin really? He can't be. Lin will be fine. A beautiful woman in green robes said with a resolute look in her eyes. Su Xiaolan pointed at the tribulation clouds in the sky with an unquestionable determination in her eyes. Once the person transcending the tribulation dies or their tribulation transcendence has concluded, the tribulation clouds will dissipate. The fact that the tribulation clouds are still present indicates that Lin is still transcending the tribulation. He's not dead. Su Xiaolan's words instantly brought everyone to a realization. His heart, which was hanging in the air, was finally able to relax a little. So Lin was blasted to another place by the lightning? Everyone knows that golden void lightning can shatter space, but this is the first time I've seen such a thing. Unheard of. So the question is, where did Lin go? As soon as he said that, everyone fell into silence. No one knew the answer to this question. Even the 5 great emperors of the heavenly court above the clouds were in a state of confusion. I knew that Lin's tribulation transcendence wouldn't be this simple. Now you know, Emperor Ziwei said. I had thought that his tribulation transcendence would be very spectacular, but it was a slap in the face from the get-go. The entire process was just an ordinary lightning tribulation. I had thought that this was going to be a very mundane tribulation transcendence, but who would have thought that he would suddenly disappear into thin air? Emperor Tian Huang rubbed his face with a resigned expression. The celestial Tharch heaved a forlorn sigh. Lin has turned a spectacular tribulation transcendence into a supernatural event. That is indeed a supernatural event. Where is he? Emperor Chongqing asked. Emperor Qin Hua held the bead in his hand before shaking his head with a hint of disappointment. This is the power of the heavens. I can't tell. I can only pray that he succeeds now, amidst a murky haze. Lin's consciousness blurred for a split second before he opened his eyes again. Chapter 1342. Lin opened his eyes, and an extremely powerful sense of feebleness washed over his entire body. His legs gave out from under him, and he almost fell to his knees. I've become immortal? He assessed his body's condition with astonishment. He was completely limp and powerless, and he couldn't even sense the spiritual energy of heaven and earth anymore. Lin looked around to find that he was standing on a large floating rock. Everything around him was murky gray, and there were countless sharp blades pointing upward from the bottom of the rock. What is this place? Wasn't I transcending my tribulation? Why am I here? Is this a dream? Or is this an illusionary realm? Perhaps I was struck unconscious by lightning, which is why I'm hallucinating? Lin murmured to himself as he drew his evil-slaying sword and slashed at his own arm. Splat! Blood splattered through the air. Lin's face was splattered with blood. Gasp! Ow ow ow! Lin drew a sharp intake of breath as he clutched at his injured arm. The excruciating pain made him realize that this was most likely not an illusion. Welcome to the space beyond the heavens. An extremely cold and authoritative voice suddenly sounded from the sky above. It was completely devoid of any emotion. Lin's expression shifted. Who are you? I am the Golden Void Lightning. The voice sounded again. Lin's expression darkened. The Golden Void Lightning can speak? Has it become a spirit? Spirit? I am the most essential Golden Void Lightning that was born from the heavens, and I have developed my own consciousness. That's not wrong, the voice replied in a calm manner. The most essential Golden Void Lightning? Unique consciousness? Lin was astonished. How did I get here? Because your tribulation lightning is me. The voice sounded again. Lin, do you have to be so arrogant? I'm just an ordinary soul formation stage cultivator. Why did the Golden Void Lightning come to me during my tribulation transcendence? Did it have to be so exciting? As long as you pass my trial, you will have successfully transcended your tribulation, the Golden Void Lightning replied. Lin forcefully suppressed his urge to complain and asked, What kind of trial do I have to pass? You just need to let nature take its course. The sound of the refined Golden Void Lightning grew fainter and fainter before finally disappearing. Lin accepted the Golden Void Lightning's explanation. After all, a being that was powerful enough to make him lose all of his strength and teleport him to another place for no apparent reason was definitely no ordinary being. All of a sudden, the refined Golden Void Lightning's voice sounded again. Tell me, why do you want to progress to the Return to Void stage? The Golden Void Lightning's voice was indifferent, but it was filled with majesty, as if it were an interrogation from the heavens. Lin was stunned. Logically speaking, there should be countless open-ended answers to this question, right? In order to pursue immortality, to seek the path of immortality, and to see more sceneries. This segment should be the heart-questioning segment. Lin answered very honestly. Oh, what a simple and selfish way of thinking. It doesn't benefit the world at all. The cold, disdainful voice sounded. At the same time, golden light flashed in the air, and Golden Void Lightning appeared. Lin's body trembled with fear. If he were to be struck by a bolt of Golden Void Lightning in his current state, he would definitely be reduced to ashes. He immediately added, Golden Void Lightning, I haven't finished speaking yet. I'm doing all of this to become more powerful, to uphold justice, and to save the world. Good. The refined Golden Void Lightning's voice sounded again. Lin. It sounded like it was very pleased with this answer? Why was this Golden Void Lightning so righteous and righteous? Seeing as you have the desire to save the world, then I'll give you a trial named Salvation. The Golden Void Lightning's voice sounded again. Lin was a little confused. The name of this trial sounded a little strange. He didn't have time to do anything else. Another burst of spatial fluctuations erupted. In the air above the murky gray space, two massive floating rocks suddenly appeared. Several thousand humans stood on the floating rocks with confused expressions on their faces. Where is this place? What? Mommy, I'm so scared. Don't be scared, Mommy is here. Ah! Look, there are so many knives sticking up from down there. All of the humans' expressions shifted drastically upon seeing this, and all of them began to yell in panic. Lin's expression shifted. He could sense that these humans weren't illusions. They were living, breathing humans. The floating rock Lin was standing on was situated between the two massive rocks, but the humans couldn't see him or the rocks. Gotcha! Another clear cracking sound could be heard. The two massive rocks suddenly began to crack open. Save me! Wah! All of the humans on the rocks screamed and wailed at the sight of the rocks cracking beneath their feet. If the rocks really did crack open, then what awaited them would be countless cold knives. Stop right now. What's the meaning of this? Unlin looked up into the sky with an enraged expression. A voice sounded from within the murky gray space again. There are a total of 10,000 humans on the floating rocks. They are all mortals that I randomly selected from the Tai Chu continent. Among them, 6,000 are on the rock on the left, while 4,000 are on the rock on the right. The floating rocks are rapidly cracking due to a lack of energy. A stone slab suddenly appeared before Enlin. There were 2 circular holes on the stone slab, and a blue bead appeared beside it. The floating rocks are estimated to crack open in 1 minute. You have an opportunity to save these humans. Insert the blue bead into the hole on the left, and the rock on the left will be able to recover. Enlin was feeling uneasy. If that's the case, what will happen to the humans on the rock on the right? The rock that has lost its energy source will completely collapse, and the humans will fall. The golden void lightning's emotionless voice reverberated through the air. Enlin. He had to choose one of the 2 humans. Are you King messing with me? Enlin roared with rage. 40 seconds left. A cold voice sounded from the sky. The floating rocks were on the brink of collapse, and they began to tremor violently. Rocks fell from the sky, but they were all sliced into pieces as if they were tofu. 30 seconds left. The golden void lightning's voice sounded again. Enlin picked up the blue bead, and his hands trembled as he looked at the hovering stone slab in front of him. There were 6,000 people on one side and 4,000 on the other. He had to save more people. The cries of despair and despair erupted from the 10,000 humans on the rocks. Enlin took a deep breath and placed the bead in his left hand toward the hole on his left. 10 seconds left. If he didn't make a choice, they would all die here. He had to make a choice. At the very least, he had to save most of the humans first. Chapter 1343. 10-9-8-7-6-5-4-3. The voice of the refined golden void lightning was like a death knell. Enlin was only a mortal now, so there was nothing he could do. The only thing he could do was choose to save one of the humans on the floating rocks. That's right, he had to make a choice. And this choice wasn't actually that difficult. 2-1. Enlin gritted his teeth and let loose a low roar before placing the blue bead into the hole on the left side of the stone slab. He chose to save those 6,000 people. Boom. The floating rock carrying 4,000 people suddenly shattered. 4,000 people fell from the sky amid blood-curdling wails before being punctured by the sharp blades on the ground. Enlin's body trembled with rage upon seeing this, but at the same time, his heart was filled with guilt. The rock carrying 6,000 people was finally able to continue to float in the air after being sustained by the energy. However, after surviving the calamity, fear still shrouded the heads of the remaining 6,000 humans. They cried helplessly and hopelessly, making a fuss and crying. Of course, there were some brave people who stepped forward to urge everyone to unite and find a way to escape from this strange space. However, Enlin knew that this was impossible without the permission of the golden void lightning. I've already made my choice. Hurry up and send everyone else back. Enlin roared with rage. Don't panic, the story has only just begun. The refined golden void lightning spoke in a faint voice. Crack! The sound of another rock shattering erupted. The huge floating rock suddenly split into 2 halves and kept moving away from each other. Thus, the 6,000 people were split into 2 groups, one on the left and one on the right. There were 4,000 people on one side, while there were 2,000 people on the other. Enlin seemed to have realized something, and his eyes widened as his breathing accelerated. He clenched his fists tightly, and his fingernails dug into his palms, but he was completely oblivious to the pain. He let loose a beastly roar. What do you want? A poisonous mist suddenly descended from the murky space. 6,000 people fell to the ground in agony, gripping their necks as they wailed in anguish. So painful. Help! Can someone save me? I'm going to die. I feel like my entire body is rotting and being torn apart. Painful wails echoed in this space. The golden void lightning's voice sounded again. Then I, the savior of the world, have another opportunity to save the suffering humans. These 6,000 humans are all poisoned and will die a painful death in a minute. However, you have an antidote. As long as you break it, you can save all the humans on one of the floating rocks. As he spoke, a crystalline blue bottle floated in the air. At the same time, a stone slab with 2 holes appeared in front of Enlin, floating quietly. One left and one right. It was obvious that whichever hole the bottle was placed in would save the humans on that side. Enlin had a mental breakdown. He pulled out his evil-slaying sword and slashed it toward the hovering stone slab in a frenzy. "You're King messing with me, I'll cut you down!" Bang, bang, bang. A violent collision sound rang out, but the slate didn't move at all. 50 seconds left. An indifferent voice came from the dusky space. King Golden Void Lightning, come out and fight me. King Golden Void Lightning, get the CK out here and I'll kill you. Enlin pulled out his sword and roared as he pointed at the dusky space. His words did not receive the slightest response. 39. The countdown continued. Enlin slashed at the hovering stone slab, the antidote bottle, and the ground in a frenzy, but it was all to no avail. The anguished cries of the 6,000 mortals continued to reverberate in his ears. In the end, time was almost up. Enlin made a decision and saved the 4,000 mortals. He couldn't just stand by and watch everyone die, so he could only choose to save more people. The antidote transformed into a mist that completely neutralized the poison in the 4,000 mortals. The other 2,000 mortals were all poisoned to death. The remaining 4,000 mortals were on the brink of mental collapse. Right at this moment, the hovering stone slab cracked open again. The mortals were split up into 2 groups of 1,000 and 3,000. Silver needles suddenly began to fall from the sky. A massive umbrella appeared in front of Enlin, which he could use to shield one of the hovering stones from the falling silver needles. This was actually quite an easy choice, wasn't it? Thus, he chose 3,000 mortals. He couldn't kill all 4,000 mortals, and he certainly couldn't kill 3,000 mortals while keeping 1,000 mortals alive. Logic told him that he could only sacrifice the small number and save the majority. The 3,000 mortals were saved by Enlin. The survivors were pessimistic and felt like this was hell, but there were also optimists who thought that as long as they could survive this ordeal, they would definitely be able to escape from this space. The hovering stone slab beneath their feet then cracked open again. Enlin silently raised his hand and continued his journey of salvation. "I'll save these 2,000 mortals. I'll save these 1,500 mortals. I'll save these 1,000 mortals." He continued to make his choice, and he continued to save. Finally, on a hovering stone slab, there was only an old woman holding a little girl in her arms. The little girl sobbed in horror, and the old woman held the little girl tightly in her arms to comfort her. "What? Grandma, I'm so scared. Are we going to die?" "Sigh. Don't cry. Close your eyes, and when you open them again, we'll be home." In front of the hovering stone slab, Enlin stood at the edge of the hovering stone slab, and his hands trembled uncontrollably as he looked at the remaining 2 people. A series of screams erupted. The little girl and the old woman were forcibly separated by a burst of power. The hovering stone slab was also torn in half. "Grandma! Grandma!" the little girl wailed. "Don't be scared, Ching Ching. Grandma is here, don't be scared." The old woman consoled her in an urgent voice. Enlin felt as if his heart was being stabbed by a knife upon seeing this. This is the final choice. You can save one person, and that person will be able to return to their original world. The Golden Void Lightning suddenly said. Enlin's body trembled upon hearing this, and he looked at the little girl and the old woman. It was a multiple-choice question again, and he had to choose who to save. 1 minute, the golden void lightning replied. Unlin pointed a trembling finger at the little girl. I'll save her. The old woman was nearing the end of her lifespan, but the child was still too young, so he chose to give the hope of survival to the child. Thus, the rock beneath the old woman's feet shattered amid the screams and cries of the little girl, and her body plummeted to the ground, having been punctured by a saber. She had died. Wah! Grandma, how are we going to live if you die? The little girl wiped away her tears with an ashen expression, and her eyes became extremely hollow, as if all of the color had been drained from them. She made her way to the edge of the hovering stone slab and looked down at the old woman on the ground with a tragic smile on her face. Grandma, it's all right, I'm coming for you. Unlin seemed to have realized something, and his pupils contracted as he yelled at the top of his lungs, No! The little girl didn't hear him. A petite body leaped into the air before plunging into the boundless sea of sabers. Blood splattered through the air as the merciless sabers punctured her frail body. Unlin's body trembled as he stared at the scenes unfolding before his eyes with bloodshot eyes. The golden void lightning's indifferent yet joyful voice sounded again. Congratulations, you've taken it upon yourself to save the common people. You've carried out the principle of sacrificing your family to protect the greater good, and you've finally killed all of the humans. Chapter 1344. The golden void lightning's words seemed to have exploded in Unlin's mind. Unlin's body shuddered as he fell into a daze as he recalled the scenes that had just unfolded in his mind. I killed them? No, that's not it. I was clearly trying to save them. I was trying to save them. Unlin clasped his head and shook his head relentlessly as he yelled in a loud voice. Save them? The golden void lightning spoke in an indifferent voice. Then look at the countless people on the ground who have been pierced by blades. They are all people that you abandoned. Unlin turned his eyes toward the bottom of the floating rocks to discover that all of the people on the ground had been pierced by blades. All of them had died horribly, and their blood had stained the blades and splattered all over the ground. This was like a scene straight out of hell, like a slaughterhouse, and it appeared right before Unlin's eyes. Despair and deathly silence enshrouded the entire space. I did all of this? Unlin murmured. That's right, these are all people that you saved. The golden void lightning's low voice sounded like the muttering of a demon. You single-handedly caused all of this. You killed all of these 10,000 people. No, I didn't do it. I definitely didn't do it. I clearly didn't want to do this. I didn't cause their deaths. Unlin's heart was filled with guilt as he looked at all of the people on the ground, and tears began to flow uncontrollably from his eyes. You're sacrificing at the same time you're saving them, so in the end, you can't save anyone. You're the one who pressed the button and made the choice to kill them all. You're the one who killed them all. The golden void lightning chuckled. Do you know how much pain they were in before they died? Do you know how much despair they felt before they died? Do you want me to give you a taste? The golden void lightning's voice traveled into Unlin's ears. Boundless pain and negative emotions instantly surged into Unlin's mind. Unlin rolled around on the ground in pain as he howled and sobbed. Anyone with a mortal body would collapse if they were to endure such a huge amount of pain and negative emotions. Unlin felt as if he was about to collapse. His mind became hazy, and his heart was filled with self-blame and a painful struggle. They all died because of me? Did I kill them? 10,000 lives. I deserve to die. He pulled out his evil-slaying sword and was about to commit suicide. Suddenly, he realized something, and his eyes gradually regained clarity. No, you're the one who killed them. Unlin raised his head and looked into the murky sky, his eyes filled with rage. You're the one who placed the human there and forced me to make a choice. I don't have any other choice. I just want to save them. They will definitely understand me. They will understand you? The golden void lightning's laughter reverberated through the air. So be it. I'll show you whether they'll understand you after learning that you were the one who made these decisions. Come out, vengeful souls of the dead humans. In an instant, countless vengeful spirits floated up from the corpses. All of them pounced toward Enlin after learning the truth about how they had become like this. Roar. It was you. Why did you abandon me? Did I deserve to be abandoned just because I stood where there were fewer people? The vengeful spirits pounced toward Enlin with a violent aura emanating from their bodies. What right do you have to decide whether I live or die? I don't want to die. Why are you so cruel? The female ghost extended her sharp claws as she made her way toward Enlin. You killed me. I'm going to make you pay with your life. The evil ghost pounced toward Enlin with a ferocious expression. The countless vengeful spirits unleashed their emotions with abandon as they pounced toward Enlin. Enlin rolled around on the ground with blood all over his body. Big brother. A crisp voice sounded. Enlin raised his head to discover a little girl standing before him. This little girl was the one he had chosen in the end. He wanted her to be the last one to survive. A smile suddenly appeared on the little girl's face as she stared at Enlin. Big brother. You're so evil. How could you let so many people die? Even my grandma was killed by you. You really deserve to die. The little girl raised a dagger before plunging it viciously into Enlin's chest. A demon like you shouldn't exist in this world. Die. A cruel smile appeared on the little girl's face. A lacerating pain shot through Enlin's chest, and his eyes were filled with confusion and remorse. Ha ha! See? All of the living beings hate you, but you're doing this for them? You're trying to save them? That's not what they think. The golden void lightning crackled with laughter, as if it were celebrating something. That's right. No one is grateful to me. They all think I deserve to die, but what can I do? Enlin also laughed as tears of blood flowed from his eyes. You actually have a choice, the golden void lightning suddenly said. What choice? Enlin looked up into the sky, and his body trembled slightly, as if he were trying to grasp onto a lifeline. There was a hint of amusement in the golden void lightning's voice. We can choose, not to save them from the very beginning and let them all die. Enlin's heart jolted upon hearing this. Let them all die. That's right. Humans are like this. They don't understand your intentions, nor do they understand your painful struggles. If you're the one who manipulated them and caused them to die, then they'll vent all their anger on you. However, if you don't do anything, then they can only blame the heavens for their deaths. Why would they blame you? The golden void lightning's words struck a peculiar chord in Enlin's heart. The more you do, the more you make mistakes. There's no value in saving a human like this, is there? The golden void lightning's indifferent voice suddenly became extremely enticing. Humans have no value in being saved. Enlin's eyes glazed over as he repeated the golden void lightning's words. That's right, just let them all die there. If you save one side, you'll become the villain of the other side. You'll become an unforgivable villain. Seeing as that's the case, isn't it better to let nature take its course? The golden void lightning asked. You're right. They're all going to die in the end anyway, so why should I be an idiot and a savior? In the end, they're going to turn into vengeful spirits to kill me. Enlin chortled with glee as he coughed up blood from his internal organs. A bolt of golden void lightning fell from the sky and tore apart all 10,000 vengeful spirits. Enlin's body was riddled with wounds, and he raised his head to look at the golden lightning before him. The golden lightning wasn't very thick, only about half the size of a grown man. Even though it was quite small, it was extremely intelligent, and it twisted its body in an extremely agile manner. A burst of paramount lightning might erupted in the air, making one feel as if they were facing the entire heaven and earth, making them feel extremely insignificant. You're the only essential golden void lightning between heaven and earth? Enlin murmured. That's right, I'm very pleased to be able to reach a consensus with you. The golden void lightning's voice was filled with enticement. The human race is going to go extinct sooner or later. If they die, then so be it. There's no value in being saved at all. Rather than expending so much effort to save them, why don't we just let them die? Lin didn't know why the topic of their conversation had taken such a turn. However, for some reason, he felt like the Golden Void Lightning's words made a lot of sense. The Golden Void Lightning adopted a humanoid form and extended a hand. Lin, you don't belong to the human race. You belong to us, so come with us. Chapter 1345. Lin was dumbstruck. The Golden Void Lightning's words contained far too much information. I don't belong to the human race. I belong to you? Lin murmured with incredulity etched on his face. He looked up at the Golden Void Lightning and asked, Who are you? The Golden Void Lightning hovered over to Lin and adopted a humanoid form with a smile on its face. Let me introduce myself. Not only am I the only essential Golden Void Lightning between heaven and earth, I am also the ruler of the Lightning Heavenly God. In other words, I am a part of the heavens. Lin drew a sharp intake of breath upon hearing this. Under the intense stimulation of the outside world, his mind recovered a little bit of clarity. At the same time, Lin was also extremely astonished. He didn't think that he would encounter a ruler of the heavenly gods during his tribulation transcendence. The Golden Void Lightning pointed at Lin. I can sense a familiar aura from your body, and I feel like you and I are the same type of aura. I trust my judgment, so what kind of ruler of the heavenly gods are you? Lin faltered slightly upon hearing this. What if he told the heavenly lightning god that he was the ruler of the lightning heavenly gods? Would it beat him up? Sigh. The Golden Void Lightning had become the ruler of the lightning heavenly gods. How was the heavenly lightning god supposed to survive? How was he supposed to bluff it? This matter was really forcing the king of trickery to his death. He had to change his title. Tamer of Divine Lightning? No. The Golden Void Lightning was lightning. Was he supposed to *CK it? Just as Lin was hesitating about what to say, the Golden Void Lightning continued, Can't you remember? Perhaps you haven't fully awakened your powers yet. You haven't awakened your own identity or the power of the heavenly gods. Don't worry, I'm familiar with this kind of situation. Do you feel a sense of familiarity when you're facing my true body? Familiarity, very familiarity. Countless mythological beasts stampeded in Lin's heart. I haven't even thought of a *king explanation yet, and you've already come up with a plausible reason? As expected of the self-awareness of the heavenly gods. Bad *SS. That's right. That's because we're family. The Golden Void Lightning was very happy to hear this. I've wandered this world, and I've always believed that there are others like me in this world. When I saw you going through the tribulation, this feeling became even stronger. You are the first existence that gave me such a familiar feeling. Lin nodded. So it was a pitiful lone authority controller of lightning. Although I don't know why it feels so familiar with me, it seems like I can still do something about it. The Golden Void Lightning continued. Even though both of us possess powers of the heavenly Tao, your attitude toward humans has clearly deviated. In this world, there are many things that can't be undone. It's the same for humans. Their mistakes can't be undone. There's no way to save them. Whether we save them or not, the result will be the same. Why not give up on them completely? I believe that everything I've done before has made you deeply aware of this truth, right? The Golden Void Lightning continued as it looked at Lin with anticipation in its eyes. Lin nodded. Yes, all humans deserve to die. Brother. The Golden Void Lightning was extremely excited. For the sake of the balance and stability of heaven and earth, I hope you can join me in my plan to destroy the human race. A plan to destroy the human race? What's the specific plan? Lin asked in a probing manner. That. I haven't thought about it yet, the Golden Void Lightning replied with an awkward expression. Lin, don't laugh at me, brother. The golden void lightning seemed to have sensed Lin's peculiar expression, and it hurriedly explained, "I can sense changes in the heavenly Tao. Not long ago, a heavenly Tao charged directly into the core region of the human race, the celestial court, after which the consciousness of the heavenly Tao suddenly disappeared. In other words, it was destroyed. Humans are not as simple as we think, so we have to take things slowly in order to deal with them." The golden void lightning's words put Lin at ease. If even the heavenly Tao was thinking this way, then the other heavenly Tao should also be wary and wouldn't attack the human race for now. That's right, Lin was still thinking about the human race. He was a human, so how could he attack a human? Everything he had done was just to get information out of the golden void lightning. Know yourself and know your enemy, and you will always be victorious. Lin had to admit that he had indeed been bewitched by the golden void lightning and had almost suffered a mental breakdown. His sense of guilt had been overtaken by despair toward the human race, and he had almost lost himself. But when he heard the words authority of lightning, his heart suddenly shook, and he came to a sudden understanding. All of this was a trap. One had to admit that hearing about the lightning authority really made one lose their composure. Lin's mind gradually regained clarity, and he slowly recovered from the previous mental stimulation. The golden void lightning was trying to convince him to switch sides and think that they were the same species, so he was naturally going to play along with the golden void lightning. I wonder who killed that brother who invaded the Tai Chu continent. To think that humans have a way to combat the heavenly Tao. An enraged expression appeared on the golden void lightning's face. Lin blinked his eyes obediently. The person who had killed the heavenly wind god was right in front of him. It looked like this so-called autonomous will of the heavenly Tao wasn't omniscient after all. In fact, it could even be adorably stupid at times. By the way, brother golden void lightning, you can sense the powers of the heavenly Tao, so how many powers of the heavenly Tao are there? Lin changed the subject with a curious expression. The golden void lightning shook its head. I don't know. I don't even know who the brother who invaded the celestial court was. I only have a general feeling. It turned to Lin. You're the first brother I've ever met. Lin smiled, but he thought to himself, it's a pity that I'm not one. The golden void lightning continued, stay with me in the heavens beyond heaven and we'll devise a plan to destroy the human race together. I'll also try to help you awaken your powers during this process. Lin faltered upon hearing this. I'm not even a heavenly god, how the hell am I supposed to awaken? Wait, I seem to have the power of the heavenly wind god? Lin seemed to have understood something. The aura that the golden void lightning was referring to and the fact that it thought he was one of its own. Could it be because he possessed the power of the heavenly wind god? Just as these thoughts were running through his mind, a burst of movement suddenly erupted within his body. His mortal body suddenly regained a sense of energy, immediately following which his sea of vital energy also began to appear. His power, which had disappeared, began to quickly return. Lin stared at the humanoid golden void lightning with a surprised expression, thinking that it was the one who had done this. However, it didn't react in the slightest, as if it was still contemplating how to destroy the human race and how to help Lin awaken his power. It was also at this moment that a pair of shimmering golden eyes suddenly opened within Lin's sea of vital energy. Chapter 1346. His sea of vital energy surged, and the golden lightning tore through the void. Lin's expression changed drastically, and he suddenly felt nauseous. Brother, what's wrong? The heavenly lightning god asked anxiously upon seeing Lin's appearance. You, come over here and see what's in my mouth. Lin called the heavenly lightning god over with a pained expression on his face. The heavenly lightning god hurriedly approached Lin and widened its eyes in curiosity. Golden divine symbols revolved around its hands, as if it wanted to analyze Lin's body. Strange, I can feel that your power that was sealed by me is recovering. the heavenly lightning god had a curious expression on its face, and it stuck its head closer to Enlin's mouth. Enlin also nodded. That's right, it's so strange. Erg. A ball of golden light suddenly shot out from Enlin's mouth. It was extremely fast, and the heavenly lightning god, who was closest to his mouth, had no time to dodge. The ball of golden light hit its face. The ball of golden light was a tiny golden person wearing a red short-sleeved shirt and shorts. It opened its mouth wide, and its mouth was even larger than its body. Just like that, it swallowed the heavenly lightning god in front of it. Roar! Let me go! A series of thunderous booms erupted, and it was as if the heavens were roaring. The tiny golden person's stomach bulged continuously, and an expression of pain appeared on its face. Enlin. Seeing this, Enlin immediately channeled all the power in his body and injected it into the tiny golden person. Even the vermilion bird in his sea of vital energy breathed out holy flames, which penetrated through his sea of vital energy and directly affected Enlin's body, helping him refine the heavenly lightning god within his body. Enlin was extremely astonished by Enlin's performance. Previously, Enlin had been telling Enlin that he wanted to eat the golden void lightning. In fact, Enlin's sealed power was also broken by Enlin's intense appetite. Enlin could even break through the power set up by the heavenly lightning god. It was exactly because of this that Enlin decided to take a gamble and lure the heavenly lightning god over so that Enlin could eat it. Now, Enkiran had really swallowed the heavenly lightning god in one gulp. This made Enlin both excited and nervous. He cheered for Enkiran in his heart. Go, Enkiran! Don't lose to the heavenly lightning god. My brother Lei, what happened to you? Let go of my brother Lei, Enkiran! Enlin yelled with an enraged expression. At the same time, he looked at Enkiran with an encouraging expression. Even if he really wanted the heavenly lightning god to die, he still had to think of a way out if he failed. If Enkiran couldn't do it, he could still continue to be brothers with the heavenly lightning god. Roar! Let me go! Who are you? Why are you able to suppress my power? The heavenly lightning god roared and struggled frantically within Enkiran's body. Enkiran remained unmoved, and he sat cross-legged on the ground. The golden void lightning beneath him blossomed like a lotus flower, and his body was as dazzling as the sun. He did his best to digest the heavenly lightning god within him. Not only was the heavenly lightning god unable to understand Enkiran, but even Enlin was unable to understand his own Enkiran. What on earth was Enkiran? Why was he able to suppress the heavenly lightning god's power? One had to realize that the heavenly lightning god represented the heavenly Tao. That was the paramount power of lightning. Why was Enkiran able to suppress it? Could it be that there was something even more powerful than the heavens in this world? Just as Enlin was feeling bewildered, it was as if Enkiran's golden light was about to break through the void and break through the entire space. Enlin was shocked. He could feel a power that looked down upon the heavens from Enkiran's body. It was as if Enkiran was the only existence in this world, and everything in this world had to bow down to him. The heavenly lightning god's struggles within Enkiran's body became weaker and weaker. Moreover, he could no longer cry out. It was as if he was a god that was slowly slipping into an abyss. In the end, he would disappear into the boundless darkness. Enlin could see that Enkiran's golden body had completely solidified. His entire body exuded a paramount divine aura, and a ring of lightning had also appeared above his head. This was the divine ring that represented the heavenly Tao. Enkiran opened his majestic eyes. There was a solemn and holy expression on his face, and he slowly opened his mouth. Ya-ya-ya-ya-ya-ya-ya-ya. Enlin's body trembled when he heard these words. It was as if the heavens were whispering in his ears. Although he didn't understand what he was saying, he felt that it was extremely bad *SS. 15 minutes later, there were no longer any signs of struggle within Enkiran's body. Heaven and earth are heartless, treating all living things like straw dogs. Heavenly lightning god, perhaps to you, 10,000 humans are no different from weeds on the ground. But to me, even if you are the heavens, I will still destroy you for slaughtering the human race. Your fate now is to pay for what you've done with your life. Unlin stared at the spot where the heavenly lightning god had disappeared and spoke with a resolute expression. It was also at this moment that a ding-dong sound suddenly sounded from the system within his body. Detected that host has already swallowed the lightning heavenly Tao. Currently, host has obtained Stage 4 Lightning Essence Cultivation Method, Stage 5 Lightning Essence Cultivation Method, Stage 6 Lightning Essence Cultivation Method, Stage 7 Lightning Essence Cultivation Method, Stage 8 Lightning Essence Cultivation Method, Stage 9 Lightning Essence Cultivation Method. Unlin was completely dumbstruck when he saw this. Holy F***ck. What on earth happened? Is the system going to explode? Did it just complete so many cultivation methods at once? Before he could even come to his senses, boundless lightning true intent surged into his mind like a tsunami. It was as if his head was going to explode. Ah! I'm going to die, I'm going to die, I'm going to die. Unlin clutched his head and wailed in agony. So it wasn't the system that was going to explode, it was him. And Kieran was still sitting on the golden void lightning lotus. He cocked his head to the side in confusion as he looked at the pained Unlin. Tai Chu Continent. Celestial Court, Xiaoxian United University. The tribulation clouds in the sky stretched as far as the eye could see, obscuring heaven and earth as dark lightning surged. There was no one left on the Pan Long Mountain, but the tribulation clouds in the sky still hadn't dissipated. The clouds swirled like dark vortexes, as if the end of the world had arrived. All the spectating students and immortals were extremely concerned. Senior student Unlin has been in there for so long, is he going to be all right? Didn't you hear what senior student Su Xiaolan said? The tribulation clouds haven't dissipated, which means he's still transcending his tribulation. He's definitely transcending his tribulation somewhere we can't see. God is invincible, he'll definitely be fine. Compared to the students' optimism, the immortals of the celestial court were a lot more pessimistic. The tribulation clouds in the sky seemed to be getting weaker and weaker. The golden void lightning imbued with the might of the heavens is also getting lesser and lesser. Could it be that the tribulation is dissipating? The tribulation transcendence is over, but Unlin still hasn't come out. Could it be that Unlin has already? Sigh. The more supremely talented a person is, the more likely they are to be envied by the heavens and fall. All of the immortals looked up at the slowly disappearing tribulation clouds with wistful expressions. If Unlin really did die, it would be an extremely heavy loss to the celestial court. Su Xiaolan wore her jade barley ink garment as she stood atop another mountain. She pursed her lips and looked up at the center of the tribulation lightning with a stubborn expression. No matter what difficulties he faces, Unlin will be able to overcome them. He doesn't even fear the heavens, so how could he lose to a mere tribulation? Chapter 1347. The tribulation clouds in the sky disappeared at a faster and faster rate. This time, even the students on the ground who did not have a high cultivation base sensed the abnormality. The tribulation clouds are starting to disappear. Why hasn't classmate Unlin appeared yet? How could this be? No way, Senior Unlin will definitely be fine. Some of the students had tears in their eyes as they stared intently at the summit of Pan Long Mountain. There was no one there, but everyone was praying for the white-robed figure to reappear. To them, Unlin wasn't just an idol worthy of worship. He was more like the most important light in the hearts of all the students. As long as Unlin was there, they would be able to break through all difficulties and darkness and never despair. But what if this light disappeared? The tribulation clouds slowly disappeared, but their hearts felt as if they had been plunged into an icy cavern. Just as everyone was plunged into grief and sorrow, the heavens suddenly began to tremor violently. An indescribable burst of power instantly enshrouded heaven and earth. What on earth happened? Everyone turned their eyes toward the sky. An extremely terrifying power seemed to have descended from the heavens. The tribulation clouds in the sky seemed to have encountered some kind of special power as they surged violently. Gotcha! Something suddenly cracked open. Everyone had yet to come to their senses. A massive bolt of golden lightning tore through the heavens like a divine sword, piercing through the heavens for over 1,500 kilometers. The dark clouds were torn in half by the divine lightning, and the dazzling lightning was even more dazzling than the sun, pulverizing everything and extending into infinity and beyond. Not only did that terrifying lightning blind the tens of thousands of students and teachers, as well as the immortals of the celestial court, but even the 5 emperors of the celestial court were astonished upon seeing it. This is golden void lightning that can tear the heavens apart. What terrifying golden void lightning! It gives me the feeling that it's the sovereign of the heavens. It's paramount and mighty, and its might is limitless. However, right at this moment, a figure suddenly appeared at the center of the lightning. Regardless of whether it was the terrifying golden void lightning or the billions of bolts of lightning within the tribulation clouds, all of them trembled and bowed before that figure, not daring to continue roaring. This was supposed to be an earth-shattering scene, but it had become as still as a painting. One person appeared, and the heavens fell silent. Is this a god? Someone looked at this miraculous scene and murmured. Wait, that figure looks familiar. Chang-Yi's beautiful eyes stared at the figure that was like the king of lightning as she spoke softly. Unlin! A pleasant yet excited voice called out. He saw that Su Xiaolan, who was dressed in green, was already flying toward the man in the sky excitedly. There were tears in the corners of her eyes, and an extremely joyful smile appeared on her face. The man in the sky waved his hand, and the lightning wrapping around his body dissipated, revealing a handsome face with a warm smile. He smiled and said, "I'm back." After saying that, he had already embraced the green-clothed woman. Unlin, why is your tribulation transcendence so terrifying? You scared me to death. Su Xiaolan buried her head into Unlin's chest as she sobbed. When Unlin disappeared, no matter how resolute she appeared to be in front of others or how much she believed that Unlin would return, she was still scared to death on the inside. It could be said that she was the person who was most worried about Unlin. Now that Unlin had returned safely, Su Xiaolan couldn't help but burst into tears as she vented the emotions in her heart. "All right, it's all right now. See, I'm fine now, aren't I?" Unlin smiled as he patted her back and consoled her in a gentle voice. At this moment, beneath the lightning clouds, everyone was astonished, followed by cries of ecstasy and cheers. "It's Unlin. It really is Unlin. Haha, I told you God was invincible. How could he lose to tribulation lightning? He was able to make all of the lightning bow down to him as soon as he appeared. What a sight to behold! I wonder just how powerful Unlin is now. Just looking at those bolts of lightning gives me chills. To think that he was able to make all of those bolts of lightning behave so obediently. What a terrifying ability! As expected of my master, he just slew the heavens." Shui Zhantian flapped his little wings, and all of the soft white fur on his body stood on end with excitement. He was like a porcupine, and he didn't even know how to use idioms anymore. The 5 emperors also stood up and stared at Unlin with astonishment on their faces. This feeling, there's no mistaking it. That power is slightly similar to the power of the heavenly wind god. Is it the same type of power? The rift in the sky slowly began to close up. The lightning divine halo above Unlin's head also began to disappear, and his golden void lightning robe turned into a white robe. Unlin was still the same Unlin, but his aura had become indiscernible and indiscernible. No one knew what would happen if he unleashed his full power. He, Su Xiaolan, slowly descended onto the summit of Pan Long Mountain. Disperse. Enlin waved a hand. Bam! The boundless tribulation clouds in the sky dissipated with a casual wave of his hand. Sunlight shone down upon the earth again, warming all living beings. Before everyone had a chance to offer their congratulations, they were once again stunned by Enlin's godlike power. Enlin, where did you go? I was so worried. Su Xiaolan stared at Enlin with curiosity in her eyes. It's a long story. I was blasted by the golden void lightning to a place called the heavens beyond heaven. After that, I seized its power and used it to forcibly break open a barrier, and only then was I able to return safely. We can discuss the details when we get back. Enlin sighed with emotion. Oh right, it looks like I'm still missing a little bit. After all, the return to void stage requires 81 bolts of lightning. I don't think I've endured the final bolt of lightning in this world. He suddenly clapped his hands together. What? Su Xiaolan stared blankly at Enlin. Enlin thought for a moment before his divine halo appeared above his head, and he waved a hand toward the clear sky. Come back, he said. Instantly, the sky became densely packed with tribulation clouds. An extremely thick bolt of golden void lightning tore through space before crashing down upon Enlin's body. Enlin spread open his arms and happily absorbed the golden void lightning with an expression of bliss on his face. The final flaw in his cultivation had been completely remedied by this bolt of lightning. All right, we can go now. Enlin waved his hands again. Bam! The boundless tribulation clouds in the sky dissipated. Tens of thousands of teachers and students were dumbstruck. The immortals of the celestial court looked as if they had seen a ghost. Even the 5 emperors of the celestial court looked at each other as if they had seen something completely illogical. Did Enlin just summon tribulation lightning again? He summoned tribulation lightning with a casual wave of his hand, then dispersed it with a single wave of his hand. Is he still a human? Even the heavenly tribulation obeyed Mr. Enlin's every whim. Do you think Enlin is still a human? He's definitely not a human, he's a god. All of the immortals were astonished. They didn't know what to say, so they could only describe him as a heavenly god. Taichu Continent, the Celestial Court, Xiaoxian United University. Enlin transcended his tribulation on the Pan Long Mountain, swallowed a heavenly god, cracked the heavens, and successfully ascended to the rank of a god under the witness of all the immortals. Chapter 1348. Master! Big Brother and Woof! Dabai, Xiaohong, and the other beast pets all rushed over to congratulate Enlin. Xianyuan Qing, Su Qianyun, and all of his other friends also came over to congratulate him. Enlin, have you really progressed to the return to void stage now? Xianyuan Qing's eyes lit up as he appraised Enlin. I don't look any different from before. Su Qianyun cocked her head to the side, and Enlin's face was reflected in her dreamy blue eyes as she spoke in a mellow voice. How is it different? You were so cool and enviable when you played with the golden void lightning like a toy. Su Xiaolan's eyes crinkled into crescents as she gripped tightly onto Enlin's hand, appearing to be extremely elated. Of course I am. When I get bad *SS, even I am scared of myself. A buoyant smile appeared on Enlin's face as he pointed a finger forward, upon which the space nearby cracked open like a spider web, upon which wisps of white lightning crackled. From afar, it looked like a massive snowflake had frozen in the air. Wow! So beautiful! Su Qianyun's blue eyes were glowing. You've only just progressed to the return to void stage, yet you're already so proficient in spatial manipulation. As expected of the most supremely talented prodigy of the Kingdom of the 9 States. Vice Principal Yuhua stroked his beard with a wide smile on his face. The little whale swam around Enlin and blew bubbles excitedly from its mouth. Congratulations, our Celestial Court Xiaoxian United University is proud of Enlin. Chang Yi made her way over to Enlin with a faint smile on her face. I really didn't come for nothing this time. Your tribulation transcendence was simply too spectacular. It's all thanks to the divine pill you refined for me, Chang-yi. Not taking into account other things, the divine pill tasted really good. Unlin gave Chang-yi a thumbs up. Grandmaster Alchemy, please give me your autograph and take a picture with you. Ishi spread open his arms and pounced toward Unlin excitedly, as if he were going to eat him alive. Unlin immediately unleashed a volleyball palm at Ishi, sending him flying just like Shuizhantian. The immortals of the Celestial Court, as well as the students and teachers, came one after another to offer their congratulations. Sword Immortal Ming Yuan stowed the photographic crystal away, and his body trembled uncontrollably with excitement. This is fantastic. Every single one of Enlin's tribulations is fantastic. I'm going to watch the video on the image recording crystal 100 times when I get back. No, even 100 times isn't enough. I want to watch such a beautiful tribulation 10,000 times. Sword Immortal Ming Yuan chortled with glee, as if he were a child who had just received a precious treasure. The 5 emperors of the Celestial Court also sent their blessings to Enlin. They were increasingly unable to understand Enlin, but they also knew that this wasn't the time to discuss this. In short, everything was fine as long as Enlin was able to successfully overcome the tribulation. The summit of Pan Long Mountain became extremely rowdy. Wang Xianyu even suggested that the entire university hold a commendation ceremony the next day to honor Enlin alone. He wanted to commend him for setting a good example for the Celestial Court and the United University of Cultivation. Enlin felt like this was too troublesome, and he wanted to refuse. However, Wang Xianyu's suggestion received the approval of all of the teachers and students of the university, and the proposal was unanimously approved. Theoretically speaking, Enlin still had a veto vote. After all, he was the main character of the commendation ceremony. However, Su Xiaolan had voted in favor of the proposal, so Enlin's veto vote was invalid. Sigh, I clearly want to be a low-profile cultivator, Enlin lamented. Big Brotherin, your words are just as untrustworthy as Sun Wukong's words about wanting to be an honest person, woof. Dabai looked at Enlin with a disdainful expression. After receiving everyone's blessings, Enlin returned to his dorm room. He needed to take a break and sort out his current situation. Within his dorm room, a frying pan hot pot party was held. Xianyuan Qing, Tang Shimen, Su Xiaolan, Luo Ziping, Yao Xiu, and all of his beast pets and disciples gathered together to celebrate Enlin's breakthrough to the Return to Void stage. After drinking to their heart's content, Enlin ate a 9-flame true yang fruit. This was an extremely precious first-grade immortal fruit that the guardian of the Sun Tree, Li, had given to him on the top level of the Sun Tree. Its medicinal power was extremely potent, and it was imbued with extremely pure yang energy. It could drastically enhance the purity of one's flame power, and it could also help one comprehend Tao intent and consolidate one's cultivation base. His power had been increasing at an insane rate recently, and he desperately needed to consolidate his cultivation base. This first-grade immortal fruit was perfect for that. Enlin ate the 9-flame true yang fruit before sitting down to meditate and consolidate his cultivation base. Bursts of flame power revolved around his body like dragons, illuminating the entire dorm room. Big Brotherin, even the special effects of meditation have become so exaggerated? Woof. Dabai was a little astonished. So powerful. Just from sensing his energy fluctuations, I feel like it's going to be very difficult to press him under my body. Su Xiaolan rested her chin in her hands as her clear eyes roamed over Enlin's body. What do you mean? You've pressed Big Brother and under your body before? What kind of position was that? Dabai shot a glance at Su Xiaolan as a smile appeared on his face. Su Xiaolan. Dabai, don't think that you can act all high and mighty just because your master is powerful. I, Su Xiaolan, can't kill Enlin, but I can still kill you with ease. Dabai felt a chill run down his spine, and his body shuddered as he immediately sprawled onto the ground and begged for his life. At this moment, Unlin was completely oblivious to what was happening outside. His eyes were tightly shut as he inspected his own body. Thinking back to the past. In the ancient Tai Chu realm, after absorbing 10 golden realm essence crystals, he had attained the embryonic body of the war god. After absorbing 100 golden realm essence crystals, he had attained the initial success stage of the body of the war god. Now, he had attained the initial success stage of the body of the war god, and in the short span of 2 years, he had tempered his body countless times. Not only did he cultivate in all types of high-rank cultivation methods, but he had also fused all types of high-rank immortal pills, immortal fruits, and divine pills. He had also experienced countless battles of life and death, and the initial success stage of the body of the war god had already been forged to the extreme. He just didn't know when he would be able to complete a mission for him. On the other hand, Zhang Xian had already cultivated 2 of the cultivation techniques to their limits, namely the wind elemental cultivation technique and the lightning elemental cultivation technique. Both of them were at the 9th level of the heavenly Tao. When he was at the soul formation stage, he was unable to use the power of the heavenly gods. Now that he had progressed to the return to void stage, he could finally use a portion of the power of the heavenly gods. However, there were many restrictions on using it on the Tai Chu continent, so he was unable to reach the heights of the heavenly wind god and the heavenly lightning god. However, he could still flex a little. He had been able to use the power of the heavenly god to deal with the golden void lightning in his tribulation transcendence, but that was only because he was transcending his own tribulation lightning, which was easy to control. If this were someone else's tribulation lightning, he wouldn't be able to do this. Otherwise, he would be able to expand his tribulation transcendence business. He had made a major breakthrough in his cultivation method. He had also attained an extremely high level of enlightenment in the Tao of space. Not taking into account other things, his perception of the Tao of space was quite powerful. After all, this was directly related to the power of his consciousness. As for the power of his consciousness, it was comparable to that of a return to void final stage cultivator when he was only at the soul formation stage. Now that he had progressed to the return to void stage, there was definitely no one in the return to void stage who was more powerful than him. All of these factors came together. Unlin didn't know just how powerful he was right now. However, if they really fought, perhaps even he would be afraid of himself. Chapter 1349. In the depths of the West Sea. On an island enshrouded in divine light. Lan Xiaoni held a secret report in her hand, and her usual majesty as the alliance leader was nowhere to be seen. In its place was an elated smile like that of a little girl. This is great. Big Boss Enlin has finally progressed to the return to void stage. I knew that a prodigy like him would have no problem progressing to the return to void stage in a few years. She held the secret report as she sat on the tall throne. She lay down on her side as she looked at the face of the man on the report, and her bright blue eyes crinkled slightly with a smile. I heard that he also eliminated the self-consciousness of the heavenly Tao, which possessed the power of the heavenly wind god. As expected, Big Boss is not an ordinary prodigy. Xiaoni has to work harder as well. The West Sea Alliance has almost spread across the entire West Sea, but there are still a few ancient powers that are hostile toward the human race that are unwilling to submit. It looks like it's time to take action against them. The woman on the throne spoke softly as a determined look appeared in her eyes. In the southwestern region of the Kingdom of the Nine States, on a vast expanse of black earth, this was an immortal realm that was completely different from the rest of the world. There were lush mountains and clear waters here, as well as all types of spirit beasts and immortal fruits. There was also boundless auspicious energy that danced in the air, and the vital energy here was so rich that it transformed into immortal mist that hovered over this vast expanse of land. If a normal cultivator were to cultivate here, they would be able to do so many times faster than in the outside world. The 3 holy disciples of the Blood Tribe were currently observing the Tao intent in front of the statue of the Blood Patriarch. Cassidy drew circles in the air with her slender finger, and a drop of blood revolved around her finger. For some reason, the statue of the Blood Patriarch, which had already been petrified and hadn't undergone any special rituals, suddenly began to stir. As expected, the Blood Patriarch wanted our holy leader's blood. The Blood Patriarch only reacted to us because we had absorbed the holy leader's blood. Cassidy nodded with a calm expression. She wasn't all that surprised by what was happening. Now that the holy leader has reached the return to void stage, we can speed up our plan. A faint smile appeared on Tobias' face, and his eyes shone brightly, as if they were brimming with boundless battle intent. I wonder if the holy leader's blood will taste even better now that he's at the return to void stage? An intoxicated expression appeared on Cassidy's face as she extended her little tongue to lick the drop of blood on her finger. Aha! Cassidy's ecstatic moans echoed throughout the land of the Blood Patriarch. Within the 4-9 Immortal sect, celebratory banners covered the entire sect. Banners such as, "Congratulations to Patriarch Enlin for breaking through to the return to void stage," "Sect Leader Enlin is blessed with boundless magic power," "Sect Leader Enlin is one step closer to ruling the world," and so on could be seen everywhere. Bai Ling wore a white dress and was exquisitely beautiful. She stood on the platform and organized the sect disciples in a tense and orderly manner as she prepared for the celebration. "Sun Shaodai, don't slack off. Hurry up. The sect leader is going to return to the sect in 5 days, and we have to show him a brand new sect." Bailian pulled out a luminous crystal and wrapped it on the head of the young girl lying on the tree branch. "Oh, I know. There's still 5 more days," the girl mumbled. "I wonder if there are any more cultivation method lucky draws. I'm definitely going to draw a good cultivation method next time." Ning Reek of the Sword Pavilion spoke with an expectant expression. "I don't have that many thoughts. I just want to see Sect Leader Enlin's handsome face again." Sun Yulua of the Sword Pavilion had a different opinion. Gasp. "That's so cheesy. Can you save that for when the sect leader comes back?" Lu Qianhuan shuddered at the sight of the infatuated Sun Yulua, and goosebumps appeared all over her body. Roar. "Dong Zhen! You stinky fox, you're drawing a cat face on my face again. I'm going to tear you apart." Swish, swish, swish. "Come and catch me, I'll..." The core disciples of the sect laughed and joked around as they prepared for the sect's celebratory activities. This carefree and relaxed atmosphere made them feel as if they weren't in the sect. Instead, they felt as if they were in a carefree paradise. Kingdom of the 9 States, Xiaoxian United University. A series of celebratory firecrackers exploded in the sky. The entire campus was in a festive mood. All the teachers and students were gathered on a massive plaza. Today was the day of the commendation ceremony. All the students of the United University of Cultivation were being rewarded for their outstanding contributions to the Celestial Court and the United University of Cultivation. This commendation ceremony was originally being held by the principal to commend Enlin. However, he felt like all the teachers and students had performed extremely well during the battle against the Heavenly Wind God, so he decided to hold a grand ceremony to commend all the teachers and students of the university. There were tens of thousands of precious fruits, thousands of magic tools, over 100 spirit pills, and over 20 spirit tools at the commendation ceremony. Almost everyone would receive a reward. For example, Sword Immortal Ming Yuan, Su Xiaolan, and Xian Yuan Cheng would receive a spirit tool as well. It was exactly because of this that the atmosphere was extremely lively. Next, let us invite our principal, Wang Xianyu, to make the opening speech. Vice Principal Yu Hua announced in a vibrant voice. Amid raucous applause, a round, inky black, 4-legged little whale slowly swam through the air before arriving on the podium and blowing bubbles in a calm and collected manner. Everyone fell deathly silent. All the teachers and students stared intently at the whale blowing bubbles. There were golden words engraved on the bubble. Today is a good day, we are all gathered together. Recently, the United University of Cultivation faced the greatest crisis in its history. However, in the face of an almost invincible enemy, the teachers and students still fought with all their might, slaying tens of thousands of foreign tribes and achieving a glorious victory. Lin and his classmates stared at the golden words on the bubble with rapt attention and solemn expressions on their faces. This was perhaps the most special speech Lin had ever seen from a principal. Everyone was completely silent as they watched the principal blow bubbles with solemn expressions on their faces. One bubble after another rose into the sky. In the end, a golden text engraved on a bubble appeared. That's all for my speech. Thank you for listening, teachers and students. Clatter, clatter. Raucous applause immediately erupted. Yes, the principal's speech is absolutely brilliant. Every single word is thought-provoking. This is the most awe-inspiring speech I've ever heard. A female student wiped tears from her eyes as she stared at the four-legged whale on the podium with reverence in her eyes. The male student's eyes were also glowing with excitement and fighting spirit. Lin was a little dumbstruck. The principal is just blowing a few bubbles. Do you have to be so excited? A white light flashed through his eyes, and only then did he discover that the four-legged whale had used a wisp of its power of the divine Tao to create a small spell formation on its bubble. Only then did the golden characters on the bubble become holy and solemn, thereby making it extremely easy to incite emotions in one's heart. So, the principal was also afraid that his speech in bubble mode would cause awkward silence. In order to protect his own dignity and make his students more engrossed in his speech, he didn't even hesitate to secretly engrave formations in his speech. However, there was no point in trying to protect his image. One had to realize that he had already been completely humiliated from the moment he appeared and spat at the students. Chapter 1350. Just as Lin was grumbling incessantly in his mind, a voice suddenly sounded. Next, let us welcome our student representative, the most outstanding student of Xiaoxian United University, the war god of the Celestial Court, and the light of the Kingdom of the Nine States, student Lin, to give a speech. His voice had only just fallen when a tsunami of applause and cheers erupted from the crowd. This was a much more enthusiastic crowd than even Principal Wang Xianyu's. Almost all of the students and teachers were clapping with excitement. From this, one could imagine just how ridiculously popular Lin was at the university. He was already a living legend. Lin stood up upon hearing this and leaped lightly into the air, landing on the rostrum in the blink of an eye. My God, how did Senior Lin get there just then? Teleportation? No, that looks like the most overpowered spatial technique, spatial skipping. Cries of astonishment erupted from the crowd. Before the students and teachers could even see him move through the air, Lin had already landed on the rostrum in the next instant. This kind of elusive movement technique had everyone exclaiming in admiration. Wang Xianyu narrowed his eyes as he thought to himself, this isn't spatial skipping. Spatial skipping isn't something that a newbie returned to Void Stage Cultivator can master. It's most likely a very special movement technique. This kind of movement technique can be used in conjunction with spatial manipulation to achieve the effect of spatial skipping under certain conditions. And Wang Xianyu was very familiar with this spell technique. It was the core spell technique used by the Kuan-Pung, the Kuan-Pung travel. Why does Lin know Kuan-Pung travel? Wang Xianyu stared at Lin with his big, round eyes. There was a look of curiosity on his face. Lin cleared his throat before continuing, thinking back to when I first entered the school, I didn't know anything. I was just an ignorant cultivator. At that time, I met all of you adorable students. Thinking back now, I actually had no interest in spirit stones or cultivation. Those days when I had nothing were the happiest days of my life. All the teachers and students stared at Lin in shock. Wang Xianyu's body was trembling lightly, and his eyes were curved into crescent moons. His thick sausage lips were pursed tightly, but he was unable to stop them from curling into a smile. He was already trying very hard not to laugh. And Lin paused and continued, "I've been in the cultivation world for more than 4 years now. I think my cultivation aptitude is not bad. I haven't been a burden to everyone." Pfft! Wang Xinyu couldn't help but spit out bubbles as he trembled. All the teachers and students had looks of despair on their faces. What King decent aptitude? What else do you want? All of us teachers and students have dragged down the average cultivation aptitude score of the entire school. I didn't disappoint, teacher, and I finally progressed to the return to void stage before graduation. And Lin sighed with melancholy. Flying Sword God Dioscoria Cancongensis and the other teachers were about to vomit blood. What do you mean by not letting me down? None of the teachers were so bold as to expect An Lin to graduate as a return to void stage cultivator. Su Xiaolan couldn't help but slap her forehead and heave a long sigh upon seeing this. An Lin had said that he didn't like to be praised after his tribulation transcendence, and that he wanted to keep a low profile. But now that he was on stage and flexing, he had probably forgotten his own King name. As expected, An Lin's words can't be trusted. Su Xiaolan shook her head. What do you call this? This is called showing your true colors. My master should be peerlessly domineering like this. Shui Zhantian expressed a different opinion as he flapped his little wings blissfully. An Lin continued, I founded the 4-9 Immortal sect when I was about to graduate from my 3rd year of university. At the time, I just wanted to create a sect for my friends to play with. Who would have thought that it would accidentally develop into one of the top cultivation sects in the Kingdom of the 9 States? All of the teachers and students felt as if their hearts were about to explode as they listened to An Lin's speech. All of them were wondering if classmate An Lin and I were really living in the same school. An Lin didn't seem to notice the expressions on the faces of the teachers and students. Instead, he clenched his fists tightly. With great power comes great responsibility. Seeing as the 4-9 Immortal sect has developed to this point, it naturally has to fulfill its social responsibilities. Hence, my sect upholds justice for the weak itinerant cultivators as well as other sections. Our sect has swept through the surrounding demonic sects, and we've even wiped out the terrifying new divine Dark Dao sect. I feel like my sect's performance in the past few years has been passable. It's passable. All of the teachers and students clasped their hands over their chests. Passable? Don't you know that the 4-9 Immortal sect has been dominating all the news in the Kingdom of the 9 States recently? That's not passable. That's terrifying. What sect has become a first-rate sect in the Kingdom of the 9 States in just over 2 years? There's only one sect in the entire Kingdom of the 9 States in the past 50,000 years. I feel like my sect will only get better and better in the future. I have this confidence. An Lin turned toward the tens of thousands of teachers and students on the plaza with an expectant expression. Our 4-9 Immortal sect also welcomes all ambitious cultivators to join our big family. Everyone erupted into a commotion upon hearing this. The 2 principals almost fell off the stage. Classmate An Lin, please spare him. Vice Principal Yu Hua transmitted his voice to Wang Xinyu. Wang Xinyu was given a massive fright upon hearing this. An Lin could just speak, but why was he trying to poach the celestial court in front of everyone? This was too much of a test of the heart. An Lin was too immersed in his role, and it was only thanks to Yu Hua's voice transmission that he came to his senses. Of course, the Celestial Court is the most powerful sect in the Kingdom of the 9 States in terms of cultivation resources, so it's still our top choice. Our 4-9 Immortal sect has a high bar of entry and is easy to manage. In comparison, the Pavilion Lord is nothing. What he didn't expect was that some prodigies were starting to become restless after hearing this. I've experienced many things in the past 4 or 5 years. To be honest, I'm a little embarrassed to be receiving the highest praise from this school. I feel like I can do better. After the Heavenly Wind God battle, Principal Wang said that the school's greatest fortune is to have a supremely talented prodigy like me who is willing to fight with my life on the line for the school. Lin turned toward Su Xiaolan, Xianyuan Qing, Su Qianyun, Lu Debao, Yao Mingxi, and the tens of thousands of teachers and students with a warm and enchanting smile on his face. But do you know that my greatest fortune is to have come to this school and met all of you? Hence, I'm willing to fight with my life on the line for my greatest fortune. Lin's words instantly caused everyone to fall silent. Immediately afterward, thunderous applause and cheers erupted. The eyes of countless students reddened as they looked at the man on the stage who said these words with extreme sincerity. They were not stingy with their applause and respect. Even Su Xiaolan's eyes reddened slightly, and she began to applaud along with Lin. She could see a different emotion in Lin's eyes. Lin was speaking from the bottom of his heart. Furthermore, she noticed that when Lin was speaking, he looked at her first, which was very touching. All of a sudden, Lin's name became the only sound on the plaza. Tens of thousands of teachers and students expressed their utmost respect toward the man on the stage. This was their senior student, Lin. The pride of Xiuxian United University. Chapter 1351. Wang Xianyu looked up at the man on the stage and admitted defeat. It really couldn't compare to a big shot who knew how to be pretentious and emotional. The campus commendation ceremony drew to a close with a warm and enthusiastic atmosphere. Lin returned to his dorm room and continued to swallow immortal pills to stabilize his cultivation base. He didn't lack money, and after consuming all types of immortal pills and spirit medicines, he would be able to progress from the return to void stage to the return to void initial stage. During the following period of time, Su Xiaolan was responsible for cooking to earn money. Lin was responsible for stabilizing his cultivation base. All of his beast pets were responsible for cheering him on. Time flew by and the stars moved. Over a month passed by in the blink of an eye. Lin ascended the full moon mountain again and looked up at the two moons in the sky. The battle between Chang Yi and that mysterious powerful being had yet to be decided, and no one could predict who would win. However, Lin had progressed to the return to void stage and was able to draw upon the power of the heavenly gods, so he was able to gauge the general situation of the battle. The red moon is about to collapse. A faint smile appeared on Lin's face. Can't you just focus on your normal Dao integration stage cultivation? Why did you have to go all out and fight with Chang Yi over that one? Who knows how long Chang Yi has been preparing on the moon? Isn't he tired of living trying to compete with her? A purple shooting star streaked through the night sky. It didn't fall into the night sky. Instead, it grew larger and larger in Lin's field of vision. That's right, it was falling toward the full moon mountain. The light disappeared in a flash. When Lin focused his eyes again, a man in a purple robe with a cold and dignified expression appeared before Lin. Emperor Ziwei. Lin saluted. War God Lin. Emperor Ziwei also returned the salute. Lin's current status was equal to that of the 5 emperors of the Celestial Court. Have you brought everything? Emperor Ziwei asked. Lin's storage ring flashed, and countless treasures instantly flew out. The energy fluctuations they released caused heaven and earth to change color and the void to tremble. Emperor Ziwei's eyes lit up. Immortal rank materials, profound snow, heavenly ice root and demonic emperor skeleton. Divine rank material. Dao integration stage true dragon essence bone marrow, divine rank material. Infernal blood divine flower. The divine fire token and the blood soul cross. Good, very good. These treasures can be fused into a sealing god artifact. However, it shouldn't be of a higher grade than the god artifact forged from the treasures you sent me last time. Lin chuckled heartily. It's fine as long as it's a divine tool. I'm already at the return to void stage, so it's time for the treasures I use to be upgraded to divine tools. Otherwise, I'll be letting down my cultivation base. Emperor Ziwei's lips twitched upon hearing this. How were all the Tao integration stage super mighty figures who didn't even have a divine tool supposed to live? Alright, if there's nothing else, I'm leaving. I've almost become your full-time tool refinement master. Emperor Ziwei really didn't want to see Enlin flex anymore, so he was about to leave. During the commendation ceremony at Xiaoxian United University, all of the teachers and students received rewards, except for Enlin. Enlin simply had too many treasures, so he really didn't know what to reward him with. After that, Enlin asked Emperor Ziwei to refine another divine tool for him. He would provide the materials. Thus, Emperor Ziwei unfortunately became Enlin's personal tool refinement master again. One divine tool was enough to tire him out, but now he had to give him two. Emperor Ziwei was getting tired just thinking about it. Thank you, Senior Ziwei. Take care, Senior Ziwei. Enlin waved a hand and happily bade farewell to Emperor Ziwei. After bidding farewell to Emperor Ziwei, Enlin didn't immediately leave. Instead, he continued to meditate on the full moon mountain. Deep into the night, the surroundings were extremely quiet, and a cool breeze blew past, carrying with it the sound of insects chirping into the distance. 2 hours later, the moon clouds in the sky parted, and an elegant figure began to appear. He wore a set of extravagant red and white pill refinement robes, and his body was as round as a ball. It was as if his frail pill refinement robes were about to explode, and his eyes were narrowed into slits as he smiled. Alchemy Ancestor, I've been preparing for a long time. Sorry to keep you waiting. The Fatso waved excitedly. His foot landed on the ground, and the entire full moon mountain seemed to tremble. Enlin's expression darkened. Call me Alchemy Ancestor one more time and I'll cut all ties with you. The Fatso before him was none other than the Do Shui Palace's top pill refinement master, Ishi. Alright, I won't call you that anymore. Brother Enlin, please calm down. Ishi smiled cheekily. Are you ready now? I'm ready in every sense of the word. Enlin nodded. I've already bid farewell to my family and friends. Everything is ready now. Let's go. Ishi's hands turned golden as he stabbed them into the air, opening a spatial gate. Enlin followed Ishi into the spatial gate. The space around Enlin fluctuated violently, and when he could see clearly again, he had already arrived in a space with a galaxy of stars beneath his feet and a pitch-black void above his head. A white-haired elderly man in a white Taoist robe stood tall and straight at the pinnacle of the galaxy, looking down upon all living beings in this world. He detected Enlin and Ishi's arrival, and he immediately turned around with a benevolent smile on his face. His voice was as tranquil as the spring breeze. Welcome to the pinnacle of the Origin Star River, Mr. Enlin. Enlin bowed respectfully. Junior Enlin pays his respects to the Heavenly Lord of Tao and Virtue. That's right, the elderly man standing before him was the Heavenly Lord of Tao and Virtue, who was known as the ancestor of all immortals and the teacher of all sages. When Su Xiaolan had been reduced to a mortal, the Heavenly Lord of Tao and Virtue had agreed to Enlin's request to reconstruct Su Xiaolan's Tao Foundation. As a result, Enlin owed him a favor. At that time, the Heavenly Lord of Tao and Virtue said that he wanted to ask Enlin for a favor when the time was right. Now was the time because Enlin had reached the Return to Void stage. Now was the time for Enlin to return the favor. To be honest, Mr. Enlin, the speed at which you progressed to the Return to Void stage was truly astonishing. It was much faster than I had anticipated. The Heavenly Lord of Tao and Virtue smiled warmly as he looked up and down at Enlin with a hint of approval in his eyes. You're far too kind, Senior. I actually don't know much about cultivation. Enlin scratched his head modestly. The Heavenly Lord of Tao and Virtue. Ahem. Let me tell you what I need your help with first. The Heavenly Lord of Tao and Virtue waved a hand, and the boundless Tai Chu continent transformed into a map that appeared beneath the three of them. He pointed a finger, and the inland sea at the center of the map lit up. Did you know that there's a place on the Tai Chu continent that very few people know about? It's a paradise of its own, and it's located within the White Nectar Sea. Unlin looked in the direction of the White Nectar Sea and asked, Senior, you want me to go there? That's right. There's a great world within the White Nectar Sea known as the Divine Source Continent. Due to the limitations of the passageway between the two worlds, it can't allow cultivators above the Tao integration stage to pass through. That's why I need your help. When you were at the soul formation stage, you were able to fight against return to void stage cultivators, but you were still too weak. Now that you've reached the return to void stage, you have a chance to complete my mission. Unlin stroked his chin and furrowed his brows slightly. I was already able to fight against most return to void stage cultivators when I was at the soul formation stage, but the Heavenly Lord of Tao and Virtue still wants me to complete this mission after I reach the return to void stage. It looks like this mission is going to be quite difficult. What do I need to do in the Divine Source Continent? Unlin asked. The Heavenly Lord of Tao and Virtue stroked his beard with a smile. There's only one thing, and that's to obtain the Heavenly Tao Fragment. Chapter 1352. Obtain the Heavenly Tao Fragment? Unlin's pupils contracted upon hearing this, and his face was filled with incredulity. He had thought that he was going to obtain some kind of treasure. Was it really okay for him to make such a big move? Although he didn't know what the Heavenly Tao Fragment was, anything that involved the Heavenly Tao was definitely not something simple. What is this Heavenly Tao Fragment? Unlin took a deep breath before asking. The Heavenly Lord of Tao and Virtue raised his finger, and a white fragment appeared above the galaxy. It reflected billions of galaxies at times, as if it was a mirror of the universe. At other times, it merged into the billions of galaxies, as if returning to nothingness. The Heavenly Lord of Tao and Virtue said, The Heavenly Tao Fragment is like this mirror. It is both real and illusory. It is the Heavenly Tao that scattered when the purple star civilization poked a hole in the sky. It is divided into the Heavenly Tao Fragment that represents physical form and the Heavenly Tao Power that represents Tao. The Heavenly Tao Fragment was summoned by the Tai Chu continent's realm core and fell into the Divine Source Continent. It enlightened the living beings of that continent and allowed them to ascend to become a high-level world in a short period of time. Because of this, the Heavenly Tao Fragment was worshipped as a divine object. Your mission is to find it in the Divine Source Continent and hand it over to me. Unlin immediately understood after hearing the Heavenly Lord of Tao and Virtue's words. Find the Heavenly Tao that scattered from the hole? Are you also a member of the Heaven Mending sect? The Heavenly Lord of Tao and Virtue shook his head with a smile. I don't belong to any faction, but I feel that Nuwa's plan is more to my liking. That's why I want to help her. Unlin nodded. Don't worry, Senior. I will definitely complete this mission. At the same time, he felt a little emotional. He originally didn't want to get involved with the Heaven Crushing sect or the Heaven Mending sect. Who would have thought that he would be implicated in the Heaven Mending sect's plan without anyone knowing? Perhaps this was fate. The Heavenly Lord of Tao and Virtue looked at Unlin's determined expression, and the approval in his eyes became even more apparent. He knew why Unlin had agreed so readily. It was because in Unlin's heart, no matter how dangerous or difficult it wasn't as important as allowing his Tao companion to recover her cultivation. Since he had helped Su Xiaolan recast her Tao foundation, then Unlin would help him unconditionally. The Heavenly Lord of Tao and Virtue waved a hand, and Unlin and she arrived in the center of a vast white ocean. This is the White Nectar Sea? Unlin looked around with shock on his face. The seawater surged like milk, reflecting the two bright moons in the night sky. The red and white blended together, emitting a strange and dreamy luster. The sea breeze blew, carrying with it a faint fragrance. It was completely different from the smell of the sea in the other seas. That's right, this is the center of the Tai Chu continent, the white nectar sea. The heavenly lord of Tao and virtue nodded. Then, with a tap of his finger, the boundless ocean suddenly split apart, revealing a huge hole. The three of them quickly dove into the hole. After tens of thousands of meters, Enlil saw a dark blue formation. The aura of this formation was vast and boundless, and it enveloped an area of over 500 kilometers in radius. It exuded a terrifying energy fluctuation, as if it could annihilate a return-to-void stage mighty figure with the slightest tremble. This was a formation at the Tao integration stage or above. This is the white nectar life and death formation that I, the heavenly lord of primordial beginning, and the heavenly lord of numinous treasure set up together. It is a formation that can kill Tao integration stage super mighty figures. It was set up here to prevent the living beings of the Tai Chu continent from destroying the passageway inside, and it was also to kill any living beings of the Divine Source continent that trespass on the Tai Chu continent, the heavenly lord of Tao and virtue explained. Enlin's expression shifted drastically upon hearing this. This was a formation set up by the three pure ones? The level of this formation was even higher than he had imagined. The three of them passed through the formation without any obstructions and continued downward. Soon, they arrived at the head of a gigantic jellyfish. The jellyfish was over 100,000 feet in size, and its semi-transparent head looked like a small continent. Its tentacles danced in the ocean like a series of gigantic dragons. This was a truly colossal creature. However, Enlil couldn't detect any aura from its body. "This is a puppet?" Enlil murmured. "That's right, it's a passageway mechanism. I used the corpse of the Tao integration stage mythological beast, the fallen cloud reincarnation mother to forge this puppet," the heavenly lord of Tao and virtue replied. Enlil swallowed as he thought to himself, "What an extravagant offer." The heavenly lord of Tao and virtue opened up the jellyfish's head and slowly advanced forward. Finally, he arrived at the center of the jellyfish's head, and he saw a gate that glowed with golden light. This is the gate that connects the two continents. The heavenly lord of Tao and virtue flipped his palm over, and two golden crystals appeared in his palm. The Divine Source continent can be said to be a great world within the Tai Chu continent. However, due to the fragment of the heavenly Tao, the passageway is extremely difficult to open. Absorb the energy within this crystal into your body, and you'll be able to travel to the Divine Source continent. Nuwa and I spent over 1,000 years collecting these two crystals. Make sure to cherish them. The heavenly lord of Tao and virtue tossed the crystals to Enlil and Yi Shi as he spoke. The two of them had been collecting for so long, yet they only had two crystals. Enlil's expression shifted once again. This opportunity to enter the Divine Source continent was countless times more valuable than he had imagined. To be honest, Enlil, I wanted to wait until your cultivation base reached the Return to Void final stage before allowing you to enter the Divine Source continent. However, we don't have much time. A hint of concern flashed across the heavenly lord of Tao and virtue's eyes. Don't worry, senior. As a Return to Void stage cultivator, I can defeat all Return to Void stage mighty figures. Enlil patted his chest confidently. But it's very likely that a Tao integration stage living being will be born inside, the heavenly lord of Tao and virtue said with a smile. Enlil, it should be fine. Enlil took a deep breath. I'm not afraid of Tao integration stage cultivators. Even though he said that, he was still grumbling internally. Holy **T. Only cultivators below the Tao integration stage could enter the passageway between the two worlds, but there was a Tao integration stage super mighty figure inside? How was he supposed to do that? Haha, I also believe that little friend Enlil will be able to do well. I am very reassured by your strength. Furthermore, my good disciple, Yi Shi, is also quite outstanding among the Return to Void stage mighty figures. At the very least, He defeated 9 mighty figures at the Return to Void Pinnacle stage under Nuwa's command when it came to determining the quota to enter the continent. He should be able to help you a little. The Heavenly Lord of Tao and Virtue smiled. Outstanding among Return to Void stage cultivators? He had defeated 9 mighty figures at the Return to Void Pinnacle stage under Nuwa's command? Lin's lips twitched slightly as he looked at the chubby man beside him with a hint of surprise in his eyes. Mr. Ishii, I didn't expect you to be so powerful even though you're so fat. You really can't judge a book by its cover. I'm not fat, I'm a product of alchemy. Ishii retorted with excitement. The Heavenly Lord of Tao and Virtue stroked his beard and smiled. It's all thanks to the guidance and inspiration of a certain alchemy mighty figure that my disciple has become so powerful. As he spoke, he glanced at Lin with a faint smile. Lin looked at the Heavenly Lord of Tao and Virtue awkwardly and innocently. His expression was like that of a little white rabbit. The Heavenly Lord of Tao and Virtue's chest tightened slightly. Does this Lin really not have any self-awareness? He had almost been scared to death when he saw his disciple as fat as a ball. He had thought that his disciple was about to explode. All right, you can enter the Divine Source continent now. I wish you all the best. The Heavenly Lord of Tao and Virtue tapped his finger, and the spatial passageway between the two worlds glowed with a brilliant light. The door opened. Chapter 1353. Lin and Shi absorbed the energy from the golden crystal into their bodies. An extremely peculiar spatial energy fused into their bodies. The energy within your bodies can last for a year. After a year, the energy will automatically erupt and open up a passageway between the two worlds. You will be summoned back by the power of summoning you back. In other words, you only have 1 year to obtain the Heavenly Tao Fragment. The Heavenly Tao Fragment does not belong to the Divine Source continent. It is the life of the Tai Chu continent, so you must retrieve it. We have already failed 8 times. This might be our last chance. The Heavenly Lord of Tao and Virtue's words were still echoing in their ears. Lin knew what it meant to fail 8 times. Those were people sent by the Heavenly Lord of Tao and Virtue and Nuwa, and they had failed 8 times. One could imagine just how difficult this mission was. This time, the Heavenly Lord of Tao and Virtue had even sent his beloved disciple and this strange cultivator. It was clear that he was planning on making one last attempt. Wait for my return. Lin left behind these words before stepping into the spatial passageway between the two worlds. The space around him warped violently as the power of the two worlds attacked his body in a frenzy. However, it was all blocked by the energy within his body. After what seemed like an eternity, the vast expanse of white before him gradually became clearer. Lin could feel gravity and the rich vital energy around him. He could also clearly see his surroundings. He was standing in the center of a white lake. The lake water was pure white, without a single speck of dust. Surrounded by lush mountains, the scenery was picturesque, as if he were in a paradise. Ishii was nowhere to be seen. It looked like he had randomly landed in another part of the world. A series of bell-like giggles and the sound of water rippling could be clearly heard. Lin turned his gaze toward the source of the sound. There were a few beautiful women playing around in the lake. The pure white lake water lapped against their snow-white skin, as if they had fused together. Their jet-black hair clung to their shoulders, outlining their alluring curve. That's right, everything here was so beautiful. Lin nodded slightly and gave this world high marks. Immediately afterward, the bell-like giggles suddenly stopped. Lin discovered that the beautiful female cultivators were all staring at him in shock. Their beautiful eyes were wide open, as if they were witnessing something extremely shocking. Ah! A shrill cry resounded through the sky. How dare you peep at us bathing? The lecherous cultivator is here. Kill him! Lin's ears were almost deafened by the woman's angry shouts. Lin finally realized what he was doing. So. A series of astonishingly powerful flying swords tore through the air, slashing toward Lin with powerful sharpness. Lin pressed down in the air, and all the flying swords seemed to have stabbed into an invisible wall. Their momentum came to a halt, and they were all imprisoned in place. Ladies, I don't have any ill intentions. I just came here by mistake. I'm really sorry. Lin apologized. Several women bathing in the lake saw this scene, and their faces turned slightly pale. The power of space. He is actually a void-level ascendant immortal? Hurry, contact the Valley Lord. They didn't seem to hear Lin's apology, and they immediately began to call him boss. Lin didn't dare to stay any longer, and he immediately rose into the air and fled into the distance. All of the women bathing in the lake were a little dumbfounded at the sight of Lin's departing figure. That senior left just like that? One of the women was a little surprised. We wanted to ask the Valley Lord to invite him to our sect for tea. Why did he leave just like that? Another woman spoke with a disappointed expression. Maybe he looked down on us, a woman muttered in a self-deprecating manner. She rubbed her chest in the water as she spoke, and she heaved a faint sigh. It's probably because we were too rude and offended the senior. That's true. The senior is like a divine dragon, and he can have as many concubines as he wants. We even yelled at him earlier, just as all of the women were blaming themselves. In the distance, Lin heaved a heavy sigh of relief. That was close. We finally escaped from that place. How could the teleportation point between the two worlds be in such a *TTY place? What a bad review. Lin harumphed lightly, and he couldn't help but blush as he thought back to the scenes of those women bathing in the lake. So be it. I'll find a place to stay first and gather some information. He nodded before flying through the air atop his brick. The Divine Source continent felt very similar to the Tai Chu continent. There were no major differences in the terrain and flora, but it was worth mentioning that the vital energy concentration here was even slightly higher than that of the Tai Chu continent. One had to realize that the Tai Chu continent was the main continent, and the Divine Source continent was only a great world within the Tai Chu continent. However, the vital energy concentration here was even higher than that of the Tai Chu continent. What did that mean? It meant that the living beings here had a better cultivation environment than the living beings on the Tai Chu continent. It was illogical for underlings to live better lives than their bosses. Is it because of the fragment of the heavenly Tao? The heavenly Lord of Tao and Virtue said that the heavenly Tao fragment descending into this world would elevate this world to a higher level. Lin flew through the air and carefully observed every inch of this world. Not long after that, a city appeared in his field of vision. The city was quite large, and it appeared to be quite prosperous. There were probably over 1 million people living in the city, and most of the buildings here were made of bricks, tiles, and mahogany. Lin flew through the air and descended upon a more prosperous area. The people on the ground all let loose cries of surprise at the sight of Lin descending upon the city. And then, an astonishing scene unfolded before Lin. All of the people on the street knelt down and kowtowed to Lin. May the Immortal bless us. Welcome, Immortal, this lowly one greets you. May the Immortal bless us. May the Immortal bless us. Regardless of whether they were male or female, young or old, all of them knelt down in unison. Lin was completely dumbstruck upon seeing this. What was going on? Something like this had never happened on the Tai Chu continent before. Could this be a custom of the Divine Source continent? Mortals kowtowed to cultivators. If this was the Tai Chu continent, the mortals on the streets probably wouldn't even need to get up. After all, there were cultivators coming and going everywhere, so they just had to keep kowtowing. Lin swept his divine sense through the area and instantly sensed that something was amiss. There were cultivators among the crowd that were kowtowing to him. There were even spirit-nurturing stage cultivators among them, and that cultivator was currently looking at Lin with a scorching expression. Upon seeing Lin's gaze, he kowtowed a few more times in excitement. Lin, Please rise, everyone. There's no need to be so polite. And Lin's clear voice spread throughout the entire street. Thank you, Immortal. The Immortal's Tao is boundless. The people on the street finally stood up amid a chorus of gratitude and praise. After standing up, they didn't leave, nor did they do anything else. Instead, they looked at Lin with anticipation in their eyes, as if they were hoping that something would happen. Lin. Chapter 1354. Lin didn't speak, and neither did they. The street was extremely quiet. Everyone looked into Lin's eyes, and there seemed to be other emotions hidden within. Lin's face was filled with question marks. This was the first time he had encountered such a strange scene. Logically speaking, since they had already finished paying their respects, shouldn't they go back to their own things and find their own mothers? What were they doing here? Brother over there, the noodles you're eating are getting cold. And the cooking master, the vegetables on your wok are all burnt. Both of them were staring at me without blinking. What kind of situation was this? Just as the situation was in a stalemate, a few powerful auras quickly approached from not far away. Insolent peasant! What are you still standing here for? Are you trying to trouble us ascendant immortals? If you want the immortal's blessing, I'll give it to you. Take it and scram. The leader of the group was a man with a dignified appearance, and was dressed in a gorgeous robe. He shouted angrily and opened his hand. Waves of yuan qi turned into energy and surged towards the people on the street. Ah, City Lord Yang Jing is here. Thank you for your blessing, City Lord. Immortal Yang Jing lives as long as heaven and earth, and shines as bright as the sun and moon. The people on the street happily absorbed the vitality energy and expressed their thanks to the man who flew over. After that, the crowd finally dispersed. Lin came to a sudden realization when he saw this scene. It turned out that after everyone knelt, the one being knelt still had to give benefits to the one who knelt? This rule was too realistic, and Lin sensed that City Lord Yang Jing was a powerful being of the soul formation stage, and the subordinates behind him were all of the spirit nurturing stage. Please forgive me for not going out to welcome you, exalted immortal. When Yang Jing saw Lin, he was so moved that he knelt down and kowtowed. Lin was startled. He immediately helped Yang Jing up and said softly, "There's no need to be so polite, City Lord. Please get up." Even the City Lord bowed to him upon seeing him. This was quite a surprise to him. At the same time, he couldn't help but wonder why the rules of the Divine Source Continent were so strange. City Lord Yang Jing and his entourage stood up and looked at Lin expectantly. Lin pondered for a moment and imitated City Lord Yang Jing's technique. He gathered the essence energy of heaven and earth and formed it into his own unique energy. Then, he poured it into the bodies of the people in front of him. Ah, so comfortable. Such pure power. I'm enlightened. I'm enlightened. Thank you for your blessing, Immortal. Exalted Immortal, live as long as heaven and earth, shine as bright as the sun and moon. After the few of them absorbed Lin's essence qi, their faces were filled with satisfaction and happiness. With utmost respect, Yang Jing approached Lin and asked, "Junior Yang Jing, may I ask why the great immortal has come to my Yongyang city? If there's anything you need help with, please let me know." Lin was a little surprised. Wasn't Yang Jing a little too enthusiastic towards a stranger? Even if he had just revealed his void-stepping technique and alarmed the other party, there was no need for the other party to be so respectful. If this was the Tai Chu continent and a return to void stage mighty figure passed by, the city lord with a bad temper wouldn't even pay attention to him. I've been in seclusion for over 10,000 years and only came out recently, so I don't know much about this world. Tell me about the current situation of this world." Lin clasped his hands behind his back and looked down at Yang Jing. Upon hearing this, not only was Yang Jing not confused, but he also became even more respectful. "So it's an ancient great immortal. Please follow me to the city lord's manor. I'll tell you everything slowly. Enlin nodded slightly and flew toward the city center under Yang Jing's lead. At the center of Yongyang City was a mountain. There were clouds and mist curling upwards, tall mountains and flowing rivers, and red-crowned cranes dancing in the sky. It was as if this was a paradise of immortals that transcended the mortal world. Enlin arrived at an exquisite pavilion halfway up the mountain and looked down at the bustling scene below. One had to admit that this place was very similar to the Kingdom of the Nine States in terms of lifestyle and customs. A woman with exquisite features and a graceful figure in a red off-the-shoulder dress personally brewed tea for Enlin. Her movements were graceful and smooth. Ha ha! Senior Enlin, this is the burning spring tea brewed by my daughter, Yang Lingqian. She's the best in the Tao of tea in Yongyang City, Yang Jing said with a wide smile. Please have some tea, Senior. Yang Lingqian extended a slender hand and carefully placed a cup of tea in front of Enlin. There was a hint of scorching anticipation in her nervous expression. Enlin accepted the cup of tea in a very natural manner. He saw that the tea was red, and there seemed to be flames dancing in the water like fairies. It was an extremely beautiful sight to behold. He took a small sip. The tea was fragrant and refreshing, but it also had a hint of passion and unrestrained flavor. Good tea. Not only is this tea refreshing and natural, but it also contains a special flame power that makes it extremely unrestrained. It's quite a good tea for refreshing the mind. Enlin praised. Then, he turned to the woman in the red dress with a smile. That flame power must be unique to Miss Yang Lingqian, right? The woman in the red dress blushed with embarrassment. It's my flame power. Making tea like this without permission, please forgive me for being rude to Senior. Enlin smiled and didn't say anything. He picked up another cup of tea and poured a cup of tea. The demonic star flame appeared on his fingertip, and a starry sky appeared on the tea. Your tea contains the power of the tea, but it lacks the compatibility of intent realms. Have a taste of my tea. Yes, Senior. Yang Lingqian accepted the tea with a flattered expression and took a small sip. Her face instantly blushed, and an intoxicated expression appeared on her face. Her snow-white body rose and fell violently under her red dress, and her breathing also quickened. Starry sky flames. So beautiful. It's as if I'm lost in it. Yang Lingqian couldn't help but exclaim in a mesmerizing voice. Yang Jing stared at his daughter in astonishment. This was the first time he had seen his daughter reveal such an expression after drinking tea. Senior's Tao of tea has reached the pinnacle. I'm full of admiration. Yang Lingqian bowed to Enlin again with an expression of admiration. She looked at Enlin with a completely different expression than before. Before, she was in awe of Enlin's identity. Now, however, she was in awe of his Tao of tea. It's just a little skill. It's not worth mentioning. Enlin waved his hand nonchalantly. Yang Jing felt even more awe and reverence toward Enlin. As expected, Enlin was an ancient, exalted immortal. He was able to subdue the number 1 Tao of tea in Yongyang City with a casual display of his skills. Alright, let's not chat. Tell me about the changes that have taken place in the past 10,000 years, Enlin said indifferently. The heavenly Tao fragment had fallen into the divine source continent 10,000 years ago. The changes that had taken place during this period of time would definitely be related to the heavenly Tao fragment. Alright, I'll tell you now. Before Senior went into seclusion, the divine source continent was in the desolate era of the 9 emperors and 1,000 kingdoms, right? Yang Jing asked. That's right. Enlin nodded. At the same time, he thought to himself, what the hell is the 9 emperors and 1,000 kingdoms? There was a hint of reverence in Yang Jing's solemn expression. But now we only have one monarch, a paragon immortal king. His appearance caused the 1,000 Kingdoms era to become history, and all lands under the heavens belong to him. All below the monarch are lackeys. Chapter 1355. And Lin's expression shifted slightly upon hearing Yang Zheng's words. Judging from Yang Zheng's words, an immortal king had appeared out of nowhere, united 1,000 countries, and brought the entire world under his throne? That immortal king is so powerful. I wonder how powerful he is? And Lin asked curiously. We don't know how powerful he is. Yang Zheng looked up at the sky and said softly, however, the immortal king has swept through the entire divine source continent. None of the thousands of exalted immortals of the Return to Void stage were able to last more than 3 rounds against him. He is the most powerful being on the divine source continent. From then on, there was only one empire in this world, and that was the Divine Source Empire. The Immortal King Palace that he established is located in the center of the Divine Source Empire, and it is the only super sect in this world. Anyone who sees the Immortal King Palace has to kneel and pay their respects, including exalted immortals of the Return to Void stage. And Lin's brows furrowed. He's that arrogant? Sigh. The entire world is under the rule of the Immortal King Palace, and all the resources are under its control. Anyone who refuses to submit will die. It's just that simple. Yang Jing shook his head and heaved a long sigh. How did this immortal king become so powerful? Was there someone like him in the past? An Lin asked. The immortal king was the former ruler of the Kunlun Empire, Feng Wuya. Yang Jing replied respectfully. An Lin pretended to come to a sudden realization. So it was him. That's right, it was him. Feng Wuya was once a warmonger who had the ambition to conquer other empires. 10,000 years ago, a meteorite crashed into the Kunlun Empire, and the world changed drastically. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth became more abundant, and the spiritual energy of heaven and earth became more abundant. It became easier to raise one's cultivation base. 1,000 years later, Feng Wuya broke through from the Return to Void pinnacle stage and reached a cultivation base that no one had ever reached before. A yearning expression appeared on Yang Zheng's face. He named that cultivation base the Immortal King stage. From then on, there was only one paragon in this world, and that was the Immortal King, Feng Wuya. An Lin's expression shifted again. Breaking through from the Return to Void pinnacle stage meant reaching the Dao integration stage. As expected, there really were Dao integration stage super mighty figures in this world. This was going to be a little troublesome. All of this may have been caused by that meteorite. How much do you know about that meteorite? An Lin took a sip of tea and asked. Yang Jing shook his head. I don't know about that. I only know that the meteorite is stored in a secret chamber in the Immortal King Palace. The Immortal King uses it to cultivate. In the past 10,000 years, there have been powerful beings who have been eyeing that meteorite. In fact, there have been a dozen or so extremely powerful exalted immortals who have appeared out of nowhere and entered the Immortal King Palace. However, all of them were killed by the Immortal King without exception, and their corpses were hung in front of the Immortal King Palace as a warning to the other powerful beings. An Lin's expression was a little grave. Those extremely powerful exalted immortals were most likely the Return to Void stage cultivators sent by Nuwa and the Heavenly Lord of Tao and Virtue. However, they had all failed. While they were chatting, dong dong dong, the distant and loud tolling of a bell rang out. Yang Jing stood up abruptly and said nervously, "This is the bell of the Immortal King Palace." That's right. Today is the day our Yongyang city hands over the immortal items to the Immortal King Palace. Saying this, he bowed apologetically toward An Lin. Exalted Immortal An Lin, I'll be taking my leave first. I have to go and prepare the cultivation resources. An Lin nodded slightly and didn't say anything else. It just so happened that he wanted to meet the people from the Immortal King Palace. In the welcoming hall of the Yongyang City Lord's manor, a man dressed in a golden Taoist robe sat arrogantly on the main seat. City Lord Yang Zheng and his daughter, Yang Lingxian, immediately knelt down and paid their respects when they saw the envoy. "Your humble servant is Yang Jing," Yang Lingqian. Greetings, envoy of the immortal king. The man casually tossed his vital energy toward the two people on the ground. Then, he said indifferently, "You may rise. Thank you for your kindness, envoy of the immortal king." Yang Jing expressed his gratitude. Then, he stood up. And Lin had used an invisibility spell technique to spectate from the side. He was slightly surprised when he saw this scene. This envoy of the immortal king was only of the spirit nurturing stage, while City Lord Yang Zheng was of the soul formation stage. Yet, he was so humble. It seemed like the immortal king palace was quite intimidating. Yang Lingqian also stood up. The eyes of the man on the main seat lit up when he saw Yang Lingqian's alluring, off-the-shoulder red dress. Seeing this, Yang Lingqian lowered her head. She had a bad feeling about this. In order to meet exalted immortal and Lin, she had dressed rather openly. Now, however, she had forgotten to change into a conservative Taoist robe. Yang Jing immediately handed a storage ring to the envoy and said respectfully, "These are the resources that Yongyang City has offered up this year. Please take a look." The immortal king envoy finished refining the storage ring. He looked at the treasures inside and nodded in satisfaction. A smile appeared on his face. "City Lord Yangjing, you've done very well with your offering. You're worthy of praise." Yang Jing bowed nervously. "It's the honor of every living being on the Divine Source continent to serve the immortal king," he said politely. "It's good that you understand this principle. It is indeed the duty of every living being on the Divine Source continent to serve the immortal king," the envoy said with a wide smile. Then, his gaze fell upon Yang Lingqian. "City Lord, I see that your daughter, Yang Lingqian, is beautiful and charming. She has the beauty to topple cities. The immortal king is currently recruiting stunning celestial maidens. He wants 3,000 concubines. Your daughter already meets the requirement. This is an opportunity for her to ascend to the heavens in a single step. Let her come with me to the immortal king palace." As soon as he said that, both of their expressions changed. "Immortal king envoy, my daughter is still young. She's not prepared for anything," Yang Jing hurriedly said. "What a joke! How could she ascend to the heavens in a single step if she had 3,000 concubines? Was it even possible for her to ascend to the heavens with 3,000? How could her daughter be happy if she was given the cold shoulder? I've recently encountered a bottleneck in my cultivation, and I need to go into seclusion to cultivate. I really can't leave now. I'm afraid I'll have to miss out on this rare opportunity. I hope the immortal king envoy can understand." Yang Lingqian bowed slightly. She hoped to use her cultivation base as an excuse to avoid this matter. The man's expression turned completely cold. "The immortal king wants to recruit concubines, and you dare to refuse? This is a great disrespect to the immortal king. Do you believe that I'll report this to the immortal king palace right now? Let's see how long your city lord's palace can last then." Yang Zheng's face paled in fright upon hearing this, and Yang Lingqian's body trembled slightly. They knew that the envoy wasn't trying to scare them. This kind of thing was far too common in the Divine Source continent. Disobeying the immortal kings would result in the entire sect being annihilated. "I'm willing to go." Yang Lingqian bit down on her lower lip. She finally made her decision. "Qian Ryu." Yang Zheng's hands trembled. He wanted to say something, but he didn't know what to say. "Father, I'm leaving. You have to take care of yourself. Perhaps I'll be able to return in the future." Yang Lingqian squeezed out a smile with great difficulty. However, she couldn't stop the tears from flowing down her face. "Haha, alright. It's your great fortune to become a concubine in the immortal king palace. Why are you acting like you're going to die?" The man chuckled. "You, come with me." Saying this, he led the way out of the palace. A huge griffin was lying on its stomach outside the palace. It was carrying a house on its back. The man led Yang Lingqian into the house. The griffin let out a loud roar and flapped its wings, sweeping up gusts of gale-force winds as it flew into the clouds. The envoy of the immortal king had forcefully taken the city lord's daughter away with just a few words. Unlin looked up in the direction that the griffin had departed in. After a moment of silence, his body disappeared from the spot. Chapter 1356. The huge griffin disappeared into the clouds and began flying toward the immortal king palace. Within an exquisitely decorated house, Yang Lingxian sat uneasily on a chair. The immortal king's envoy was sitting beside her with a relaxed expression. He was sizing her up with interest. "You're very beautiful, and your aptitude is also quite good. If you really become the immortal king's concubine, you might be able to climb up the ranks and become an immortal concubine. When that time comes, you'll be able to have anything you want." The immortal king's envoy nodded with satisfaction. Yang Lingxian pursed her thin lips and nodded lightly. "Thank you for your praise, immortal king's envoy. I'll definitely work hard." Very good." The man brought out a wine cup filled with sparkling white liquid from his storage ring and handed it to Yang Lingxian. "This is Wind Spirit Divine Wood Wine. It has the miraculous effects of nourishing your skin and increasing your vitality. You can have a taste." Yang Lingxian hesitated momentarily before accepting the wine cup from the man. She didn't dare to disrespect the immortal king's envoy, so she obediently took a sip of the liquid in the cup. The taste of the wine was refreshing and natural. It melted into her body as soon as it entered her mouth. There was even a faint alcoholic aroma. "How does it taste?" the man asked. "Delicious." Yang Lingxian nodded lightly. However, she suddenly discovered that her body was becoming weak and feeble. It was as if all the meridians in her body had been blocked by some kind of power. At the same time, her entire body began to heat up. What did you give me to drink?" Yang Lingxian's beautiful eyes widened as she stared intently at the man sitting beside her. An extremely ominous feeling welled up in her heart. I've given you a drug that can make you look extremely amorous." The man stood up. His calm expression was completely gone as his eyes wandered over Yang Lingxian's body with greed. Yang Lingxian understood. She stared at the man in front of her with incredulity. "You? How dare you?" The man splayed his hands open. "Why wouldn't I dare? You're not the immortal king's concubine yet. You're merely the daughter of a city lord. I'll take care of you here, and then I'll kill you. When the time comes, I can just say that an accident happened while I was taking you to the immortal king palace, and you died a horrible death at the hands of a mutant beast. Could it be that Yang Zheng can do anything to me, the immortal king's envoy?" Yang Lingxian's body trembled slightly upon hearing this, and an expression of humiliation and despair appeared on her face. "You can only blame yourself for being too seductive." The man's scorching gaze roamed up and down Yang Ling's slender body. Then, he looked at her beautiful face and her eyes, which looked like they were about to burst into tears. All of this made him extremely excited. "Of course, if you can completely submit to me and become my concubine, I can consider sparing your life." The man slowly made his way toward Yang Lingxian. He licked his lips and said, "I can't bear to kill such an exquisitely beautiful woman after my first pleasure. Don't come over." Yang Lingxian's breathing accelerated. Her entire body was limp from the effects of the pill, and she didn't even have a chance to unleash a spell technique. Tears were already flowing from her eyes. Suddenly, she pulled out a dagger from her waist and stabbed herself in the heart. The man immediately waved a hand through the air upon seeing this. There was a loud bang and the dagger fell to the ground. Yang Lingxian also fell to the ground due to the force of the impact. "Oh my, you're dressed so seductively. Who would have thought that you'd be so chaste?" The man's gaze became even more scorching as he spoke, and he reached out toward the woman on the ground. Right at this moment, a gust of wind blew past. Everything fell silent. The man suddenly discovered that his entire body had been restrained by a peculiar power. "Who is it?" The man's expression shifted drastically. Show yourself. A handsome man in a flowing white robe suddenly appeared beside the Immortal King's envoy. There was a look of exasperation on his face as he shook his head. Geez, I just wanted to hitch a ride to the Immortal King's palace. Why do you have to show me this? Yang Lingqian's pupils contracted upon seeing the white-robed man's appearance. You're an exalted immortal Lin. An exalted immortal? The Immortal King's envoy's expression also shifted upon hearing this. Exalted immortals were the rulers of nations in ancient times. Even now, they were still extremely revered beings. Ordinary people would perhaps prostrate themselves in worship upon seeing exalted immortals. However, members of the Immortal King's palace were exceptions. A ferocious expression appeared on the Immortal King's envoy's face. So what if you're an exalted immortal? Open your eyes and look carefully. I'm the Immortal King's envoy. I advise you to mind your own business. Hurry up and kneel before me. Then scram. Bam bam. Two explosions erupted, accompanied by the man's shrill cries. The man's kneecaps were shattered, and he knelt before Anlin. Anlin chuckled coldly. Who would have thought that a measly spirit-nurturing stage cultivator would dare to act so arrogantly in the face of a return-to-void stage exalted immortal? The man howled in anguish as he knelt on the ground. There was a look of resentment on his face as he glared at Anlin. Seeing the Immortal King's envoy is like seeing the Immortal King. How dare you injure the Immortal King's envoy? The Immortal King definitely won't forgive you. Heh! Immortal King's envoy? In my eyes, the Immortal King is nothing. If he doesn't come looking for me, I'm going to go looking for him. He dares to throw a tantrum in front of me with just a tiger flag? A loud slap sounded as he spoke. Anlin slapped the Immortal King's envoy across the face again, causing him to throw up a mouthful of blood. The man clasped his swollen face and gritted his teeth. Every Immortal King's envoy is related to the Immortal King's reputation. He's already planted a tracking seed in our bodies. If you continue to do this and get discovered, you'll definitely be sliced into pieces by the Immortal King. I advise you to kowtow and apologize to me. How about, before he could finish his sentence, he suddenly felt a scorching sensation in his heart. Then, a burst of power tore at something within his heart. In the next instant, an inky black flame seed appeared in Anlin's hand. Oh? This is the seed left behind by Immortal King Fenghuia? Interesting. Anlin looked at the dancing flame in his hand with an intrigued expression. The man looked as if he had seen a ghost. How could this be? This is the power of the Immortal King. You're only an exalted immortal. How did you discover and extract the flame seed from my body? He had never seen something like this before, and his face instantly turned deathly pale. Terror finally welled up in his heart. Why is it not possible? I just casually grabbed it. Anlin chuckled. That's right, you're useless now. You can die now. An expression of horror and despair appeared on the man's face. No. You can't. Before he could finish his sentence, a divine flame engulfed his body. An anguished wail reverberated throughout the room. The man's body was instantly incinerated into wisps of smoke by the divine flame. TSK, you're just a bunch of trash. I can't be bothered to waste my breath. Anlin shook his head and extinguished the black flame seed in his hand. After doing all this, he was just about to turn around and help Yang Lingqian up. He had only just turned around when a red figure pounced toward him and pushed him to the ground. A warm and soft body pressed firmly against him. Anlin's eyes widened. He could see that Yang Lingqian's breathing was a little erratic, and her eyes were glazed over. Her alluring features were now flushed red, creating an extremely alluring sight. Before Anlin could say anything, Yang Lingqian lowered her head and pressed her red lips tightly against Anlin's. Chapter 1357. Anlin was dumbstruck for a split second. This allure was far too sudden. For some reason, Yang Lingqian's snowy white skin was tinged with a faint pink color and was a little hot. Her bare shoulders were pressed against Lin's chest, which was rising and falling violently, sending a soul-stirring sensation through his body. Her arms were tightly wrapped around Lin's waist, and her eyes were captivating. Her red lips pressed against Lin's lips, and her little tongue stuck out as she sought to taste him to her heart's content. Yang Lingqian was already an alluring beauty, and her figure was superb. Her waist was slender, and her legs were long and slender. Now that she was in heat, she was extremely alluring. Her long, slender legs peeked out from her red dress, and it was as if she wanted to clamp down on Lin. But who was Lin? How could an ordinary cultivator compare to him? Lin immediately sent Yang Lingqian flying with a slap. "How dare you, seductress? Don't you dare take advantage of me!" Lin roared. However, Yang Lingqian crawled back to her feet after being slapped away. Exalted immortal Lin, She wiped the blood from the corner of her mouth, and her face was flushed red with embarrassment. She looked at Lin with a hint of desire in her eyes, and her slender hands caressed her exquisite collarbone. She licked her red lips, and she was about to pounce on Lin again. Lin's lips twitched. Holy F***ck. Is the drug that powerful? Yang Lingqian pounced on him, and Lin immediately activated his evergreen technique. He tapped a finger on Yang Lingqian's soft and scorching abdomen, and power instantly surged through her entire body. Yang Lingqian's body stiffened on the spot. The drug's effects quickly receded, and her eyes finally regained clarity. Lin heaved a sigh of relief upon seeing this. She wants to use an aphrodisiac to make me lose my virginity? Dream on. He wasn't such a vulgar person. Besides, only the female had been affected by the aphrodisiac this time, and he hadn't been affected by it. If he really tried to make a move, how would he be any different from a beast? Thus, Lin became a person who was worse than a beast. This exalted immortal Lin, Yang Lingqian's eyes regained their clarity, and she gathered her disheveled clothes with her hands. Tears threatened to fall from her eyes. Exalted immortal, I'm really sorry. I didn't do it on purpose. She knelt on the ground, her face full of shame. She wanted nothing more than to crawl into the ground. Hurry up and get up. I know you didn't do it on purpose. Lin hurriedly helped Yang Lingqian up. This is all because of that piece of trash. Yang Lingqian looked at Lin with an aggrieved and grateful expression. Thank you, exalted immortal Lin. If it weren't for you, I would probably be. She thought about committing suicide, but she didn't even have the strength to do so at that time. If not for Lin's intervention, her body would definitely have been ravaged by that immortal king's envoy. Thinking back to Lin's calm and collected demeanor, Yang Lingqian couldn't help but admire the man standing before her. At the same time, her impression of Lin also improved significantly. It's all in the past now. It's all right. Lin consoled her in a gentle voice before picking up the storage ring from the ground. Exalted immortal Lin, you killed the immortal king's envoy. You should hurry up and escape. As long as you don't leave any traces nearby, the immortal king won't be able to find you. Yang Lingqian urged in a panicked voice. Escape? Why would I escape? Lin chuckled. What are you going to do if you don't escape? Yang Lingqian's eyes widened. Lin refined the storage ring and looked at the dazzling array of treasures within it. Yongyang City still hasn't offered any treasures to the Immortal King Palace, right? I'm going to help the envoy to the end. Yang Lingqian was truly given a fright this time. You don't have to take such a risk. If we escape now, the Immortal King's envoy's death won't be traced back to us. Just leave the offering to my father. No, I want to take such a risk. And Lin spoke in a resolute voice. Yang Lingqian. Oh, that's right. You can go back now. You're free now. And Lin smiled. Yang Lingqian hesitated momentarily upon hearing this. No, exalted immortal Enlin, you've only just come out of seclusion, so there are many things you don't know. I can stay by your side and help you. Enlin looked deeply at the woman in the red dress beside him. You already said that this trip is going to be extremely perilous, yet you're still willing to follow me? The woman pursed her lips and said with a determined expression, I was saved by you, senior. So what if I die because of this? I'll just let Qian stay by your side and help you. Enlin added upon seeing the woman's resolute expression, I'll tell you another secret. There's a very high possibility that I'll have to fight the immortal king on this trip. Yang Lingxian. Enlin couldn't help but burst into laughter at the sight of her trembling body and her cheeks turning deathly pale. Do you still want to come? After a while, Yang Lingxian took a deep breath. I've already told you that you saved me, so I have to repay you. If worst comes to worst, I'll just die. So what if you kill an immortal king? Enlin looked at the woman in front of him again. Yang Lingxian wasn't very powerful, but he couldn't help but sigh in admiration at her tenacity. From her resolute refusal to recruit a concubine to her decision to sacrifice herself for the safety of those around her, and now to her decision to stay by his side in order to repay him, everything this woman did required a lot of courage, but she still did it. However, what Enlin didn't expect was for Yang Lingxian to think like this. Killing the immortal king? That's just a bluff. Exalted immortal Enlin is most likely going to the immortal king palace, so it shouldn't be too risky. After all, which exalted immortal wouldn't care about their own lives? He's definitely using this method to test my loyalty. I'll definitely perform well. Seeing as that's the case, you can stay. I'm also lacking a guide. Enlin sighed lightly. He finally accepted Yang Lingxian's request to follow him. Don't worry, exalted immortal Enlin, I'll definitely tell you everything I know. Yang Lingxian clenched her little fists and spoke with fighting spirit in her voice. Enlin sat back down in his chair and looked at the griffin outside the room with a smile. This beast doesn't even know that its master has died. It's still flying? The griffin is a common steed in the Immortal King Palace. Its master isn't the Immortal King's envoy. As long as no one commands it, it will continue to fly according to its predetermined path. Yang Lingxian smiled and said, We'll arrive at the Immortal King Palace in 10 days. Enlin nodded. 10 days wasn't a long time. He began to rummage through the items in his storage ring. There's so much good stuff in just one city's offerings? Enlin was a little astonished as he rummaged through the treasures in his storage ring. There were 100,000 spirit stones, as well as all types of strange treasures that he couldn't recognize. Enlin didn't recognize most of them. Every place had its own unique characteristic. Our Yongyang city is a large city, so we have more offerings, Yang Lingxian said. Some small cities are too poor and don't have anything good to offer. The Immortal King will send people to wipe those cities off the face of this world. Enlin's expression shifted upon hearing this. Isn't that a little too harsh? He said that weaklings don't have the right to live in this world, Yang Lingxian said. It's precisely because of Immortal King Feng Wuya's tyrannical rule and insane accumulation of wealth that the city lords of many cities will exploit the residents like crazy when their income is low. This has resulted in many cities living in destitution. Enlin fell silent for a moment before saying, The Immortal King is a tyrant. Even someone like him can rule over the entire continent. A resigned expression appeared on Yang Lingxian's face. It can't be helped. It's been 9,000 years since the Immortal King unified the entire continent. There have been over 100,000 uprisings, but none of them have succeeded. Enlin was speechless upon hearing this. Isn't there a little too many uprisings? Chapter 1358. Not all tyrannical regimes will be overthrown. If we want to make change, we'll need more power. Yang Lingxian was clearly very displeased with the Immortal King's actions, but she could only smile wryly in the end. I had thought that Feng Wuya's breakthrough would usher in a new era of cultivation, and countless exalted immortals would break through to new cultivation bases. Who would have thought that the beginning would be the end? No one would break through to a new cultivation base for the next 10,000 years. Lin chuckled upon hearing this. Heh! I'd like to see just how powerful this faction that has failed to topple even after over 100,000 revolts is. Yang Lingxian turned to Lin with a curious expression. How do you want to see it? I want to fight him, Lin replied. All of the immortals he fought have died, Yang Lingxian said in a panicked voice. Then I want to see if I'm going to beat him to death, or if he's going to beat me to death. Lin's eyes burned with the flames of battle. Yang Lingxian. Lin leaned toward Yang Lingxian with a smile on his face. What, are you scared again? Of course not. I'm not scared. A faint blush appeared on Yang Lingxian's face as she averted her gaze. She had initially thought that Lin was only bluffing when he said he wanted to fight the immortal king. However, it looked like Lin really was going to fight him. The griffin continued to fly toward the immortal king palace. Lin looked down at the continent below him from within his house. He saw a series of different nations and different tribes, but overall, the majority was still human. The immortal king of this world, Feng Wuya, was also a human. From a basic perspective, this was a very good world. Lin had been to many worlds: Earth, the Zhanqi continent, the ancient Tai Chu realm, the ancient Tai Chu dragon realm, the divine mirror world. The divine source continent gave him the feeling that it was only inferior to the Tai Chu continent. Unfortunately, due to Feng Wuya's tyrannical rule, most of the living beings in this world were unhappy. Otherwise, there wouldn't be so many brave warriors who still chose to rise up against Feng Wuya despite knowing how powerful he was. Up ahead is the main city of the Divine Source Empire, Kunlun City. It used to be the Kunlun Empire. That meteorite landed in the Kunlun Empire's Qingtan City, Yang Lingxian said as she pointed ahead. Lin looked out of the window and saw a white city wall that was hundreds of meters tall, standing on the ground like a giant beast. Inside the city was a bustling city, with all kinds of creatures coming and going. There was no end in sight. Towering towers gave off a dazzling white light, and ripples of energy spread out in all directions. The points of the towers formed lines, and the lines formed planes, forming a massive formation. How impressive! This Dao integration stage formation enshrouds the entire Kunlun city, allowing it to observe everything that's happening in the entire city. Furthermore, it can attack wherever it wants. A white light flashed through Lin's eyes as he clicked his tongue in wonder. Kunlun City was larger than any city he had seen in the past. It was truly boundless, with no end in sight. There were at least several 100 million living beings living in this city. Hence, instead of saying that this formation could encompass an entire city, it was more accurate to say that this formation could encompass an entire nation. Dao integration stage formation? What rank is Dao integration? Yang Lingxian looked at Lin with a confused expression. Dao integration refers to a cultivator walking out of their own Dao and condensing their own Dao into the great Dao of heaven and earth. This process is known as Dao integration. That Feng Wuya is most likely a Dao integration stage supermighty figure, Lin explained. Yang Lingxian's eyes widened as if she was listening to a heavenly book. She looked at Lin with astonishment. In this world, Feng Wuya is the only being who has reached a new rank. No exalted immortal knows what rank Feng Wuya is at. How do you know? Lin stood up and clasped his hands behind his back. He looked up at the sky outside the window and said in a slow voice, "The heavens are vast, and the rivers of stars are vast. This world is very big, and there are many things you don't know about." Yang Lingxian looked at the man's ethereal figure and listened to his words. For some reason, a sense of awe and yearning welled up in her heart. She still didn't know how Lin knew about Feng Wuya's cultivation base. However, she knew that Lin was very bad *SS. When the man turned around again, his face had turned ugly. Yang Lingxian was given a fright, and she stumbled back a few steps. You're exalted immortal Unlin? Unlin nodded, and a sinister smile appeared on his face. What do you think? Do I look like him? Yang Lingxian patted her voluptuous chest and heaved a sigh of relief. Phew! You scared me to death. You really do look like him. Regardless of whether it's your appearance, expression, or aura, you're very similar to that immortal king's envoy. Unlin was very satisfied with Yang Lingqian's reaction. Now that he had used his water-type cultivation method, the divine liquid of creation, to disguise himself, even Tao integration stage super mighty figures wouldn't be able to discover his true form unless they focused their divine sense. Chirp! The griffin in the sky suddenly let loose a clear cry before diving downward. Then, it landed with a resounding boom. We're here, Yang Lingxian said nervously. Unlin opened the door, and Yang Lingxian followed closely behind him. After exiting the room, they were greeted by the sight of a pristine, white palace. These buildings were all very unique in shape. All of them were triangular in shape, with the base being large and the top being small. The smaller ones were several dozen meters tall, while the taller ones were several hundred meters tall or several thousand meters tall. This was the first time Unlin saw these buildings, and he immediately thought of the pyramids of ancient Egypt on Earth. However, the buildings in front of him were different in that they were pure white, and their surfaces were extremely smooth. It was clear that they had been constructed with special materials. One griffin after another descended from the sky, and it felt like an airport. Many arrogant cultivators walked out from the griffin. For some reason, they all exuded an air of arrogance. Yo, Lu Peng, you brat! You brought back a supreme-grade immortal for the immortal king. You'll probably be rewarded handsomely this time. A purple-robed cultivator walked over and looked at Yang Lingxian with glowing eyes. Yang Lingxian felt extremely uncomfortable under his gaze, and she inched closer to Unlin. Unlin only found out now that the person he had burned was called Lu Peng. A solemn expression immediately appeared on his face. It's my honor to serve the immortal king. Even if I don't receive any rewards, I'll still do my best. The purple-robed cultivator sneered. You're still the same bootlicker. However, I'm a little surprised that you gave this supreme-grade immortal to the immortal king. With your lecherous personality, I thought you'd keep it for yourself. Unlin thought to himself, you really do know Lu Peng. He really does want to keep it for himself. For the immortal king, I'm willing to give up everything. A fanatical expression appeared on Unlin's face. All right. Hurry up and escort her to the back of the palace. The man seemed to be unable to stand Unlin's attitude, and he waved his hand before leaving. Yang Lingxian stood behind Unlin with a nervous expression. What do we do now? Don't tell me you really want me to. Unlin shook his head. Don't worry, leave it to me. Chapter 1359. Let's follow Lu Peng's route for now. That way we won't be discovered easily, and we'll be able to gather information. Don't worry, I'll protect you, Unlin said in a low voice. All right, I'll listen to you. Yang Lingxian nodded obediently. Unlin had come to the Immortal King Palace to search for the Heavenly Tao fragment. It would be even better if he could steal the Heavenly Tao fragment without anyone noticing. After all Tao integration stage super mighty figures were supremely talented and had many trump cards up their sleeves. None of them were easy to deal with. Apparently, there were over 1,000 return to void stage super mighty figures in the Divine Source continent, but only one Tao integration stage super mighty figure had appeared. From this, one could imagine just how rare and terrifying Tao integration stage super mighty figures were. He had never fought a Tao integration stage super mighty figure before. No matter how confident he was, he didn't dare to guarantee that he could defeat a Tao integration stage super mighty figure. Hence, stealing the Heavenly Tao fragment was Unlin's best option. Yang Lingqian's mood became a lot more relaxed. As expected, Exalted immortal Enlin wasn't a suicidal maniac. He knew when to advance and when to retreat. He was just trying to scare her. Some of the immortal king ambassadors who had returned on their griffins also brought back beauties with them. Enlin followed behind them, and he would be able to find his way to the harem. Yang Lingqian was the most beautiful among the beauties, so she attracted a lot of attention. Roar! Mr. Lu Peng, the immortal king concubine you brought looks quite good. A soul beast with the head of an eagle and the body of a tiger said with an envious expression. Enlin glanced at the soul beast's side with a smile. The vixen you brought is quite a beauty as well. The vixen wagged her white tail, and she didn't forget to throw a flirtatious wink at Enlin as she flexed her graceful figure. Enlin could tell that she was a vicious character who would actively compete for the immortal king's favor. Ha ha! Mine is SOSO. The immortal king has gotten sick of eating wild animals recently, and he wants human concubines. Back in the day, the immortal king loved the beauties of the fox tribe the most. The soul beast sighed with emotion before turning to look at Enlin with an envious expression. Enlin was a little surprised to hear this. Yang Lingqian transmitted her voice to Enlin at this moment. Not only is immortal King Feng Weia violent, but he's also extremely licentious. In the entire continent, he was interested in all the beauties of the races that resembled the human race. Of the 3,000 concubines in his harem, more than half of them aren't human. Vixens, mermaids, snake spirits, primordial demonesses, tree of life spirits. He likes them all. Enlin sucked in a breath of cold air. Was this guy not only a tyrant, but also a freaking poodle? This was too scary. Did he no longer care about race when he became lascivious? Enlin walked forward and arrived in front of a huge triangular building that was over 1,000 meters tall. An extremely beautiful woman was methodically recording the names of the women she had brought. Her eyes lit up when she saw Yang Lingqian, who was with Enlin. "What's your name?" Yang Lingqian bowed slightly. "My name is Yang Lingqian, the daughter of the city lord of Langya Nation's Yongyang City. Are you a virgin?" the woman asked again. Yang Lingqian blushed, but she still nodded. "Yes." "Good, very good." The woman nodded joyfully before turning to Enlin. "Lu Peng, you did well this time. I'll give you full stars for the concubine recruitment mission." Enlin pretended to be overjoyed as he bowed. "Thank you for your praise, Your Majesty." Right at this moment, a sound suddenly sounded in his mind. Ding dong! The system interface lit up for the first time in a long time. Enlin excitedly opened the system interface. Detected that host is approaching the Spring Light Palace. Now assigning the following special mission. A true war god should take on the responsibility of rescuing all living beings. There are currently over 2,000 women imprisoned in the palace. Rescue at least 2,000 women and obtain the favor of 2,000 beautiful women. The mission will be completed. Mission success. Receive the second stage of the Divine Might Technique, the Great Divine Might Technique. Mission failure. What do I need this metal staff for? Impotence for 100 years. Note, time limit 1 month. This mission cannot be rejected. Enlin felt as if he had vomited a mouthful of blood when he saw this system. Why did the system always make life difficult for his little brother? His little brother didn't do anything to provoke the system. Also, he had to rescue over 2,000 beautiful women from the harem and obtain the favor of 2,000 beautiful women. Could it be that this mission meant that he had to make immortal King Feng Weia a cuckold? Did it have to be so exciting? Enlin was suddenly feeling a little sorry for Feng Weia. "Someone, bring Yang Lingqian into the Spring Light Palace," the gorgeous female commanded. Yang Lingqian turned to Enlin with a pleading expression. Enlin transmitted his voice to her. "Don't worry, I'll protect you from the shadows." Yang Lingqian nodded and followed the servant in another direction. Enlin left the white triangular building and made his way to a place where there was no one around. His body then transformed into a cloud and mist before disappearing on the spot. Mist immortal technique. A cloud and mist swept past and caught up to Yang Lingqian. However, she was completely unaware of this as she continued to survey her surroundings with unease. The one with the highest cultivation base here was the beautiful woman who was responsible for collecting concubines. She was at the return to void intermediate stage, so she was completely unable to detect Enlin's presence. After walking for a short while, a gate appeared before them. There were large, shiny, golden words on the gate, Spring Light Palace. Yang Lingqian walked into the Spring Light Palace. Enlin maintained his cloud and mist form as he snuck into the Spring Light Palace alongside Yang Lingqian. To put it in simpler terms, Enlin had snuck into Feng Wuya's harem. Enlin surveyed his surroundings with a curious expression. The scenery here was definitely beautiful. Hundreds of flowers were in full bloom, and the scenery was extremely vibrant. There was a scenery every 10 steps, and there were exquisite sceneries everywhere one went. Women loved flowers, so there was nothing wrong with this arrangement. Aside from the scenery, there were also a series of triangular palaces scattered about. They blended in with nature, creating a sense of tranquility and harmony. From time to time, the pleasing voices of women could be heard. Enlin even saw an octopus concubine. Even though she had the appearance of a woman, there was a series of large suckers on her smooth skin. He was truly astonished by this scene. He couldn't help but sigh with emotion at Feng Wuya's appetite. You can live here from now on. You can hang out with your other sisters, a white-robed servant said with a smile. Another white-robed servant chimed in, I'll send a portrait of you to the immortal monarchs. If the immortal king is interested in you and visits you, you'll be able to enjoy endless riches and glory. Thank you, big sister. Yang Lingqian bowed obediently. The white-robed servant nodded with a smile. Your appearance is also quite outstanding among all of the concubines. I'm sure that day will come soon. The two white-robed servants bade farewell. Only then did Yang Lingqian lie down on her bed. With an aggrieved expression, she murmured to herself, I wonder when exalted immortal Enlin is going to come and save me. If he comes too late and Feng Wuya comes before him, what am I going to do? Chapter 1360. Yang Lingqian stared up at the ceiling. No one knew what she was thinking. A voice suddenly sounded beside her. Don't worry, I'm always by your side. There's no way he's faster than me. Yang Lingqian almost screamed in fright upon hearing this sudden voice. A hand suddenly appeared and covered her mouth. The shock in Yang Lingqian's eyes was replaced by undisguisable joy when she saw the man before her. Enlin made a shushing gesture, and Yang Lingqian nodded obediently. Only then did he slowly release his hand from her mouth. You're finally here. Yang Lingqian smiled. Enlin was speechless as he looked at her. We've only been apart for about 10 minutes, and you're already acting like you've finally reunited with me. I'm just scared. Yang Lingqian blushed slightly. Oh right. Have you taken care of your business? When can we leave? Enlin's expression darkened. What business? Can I take care of it in less than 10 minutes? Yang Lingqian's blush deepened, and she looked like a ripe apple as she blinked at Enlin. You can take care of that business. Enlin faltered for a moment before coming to his senses. He flared up with rage. You're insulting me. Yang Lingqian recoiled in fright. I'm sorry. Enlin didn't dare to act up at the sight of the frightened woman. Not only did the system have a problem with his little brother recently, but even this woman had misunderstood his little brother. Enlin felt like it was time to find an opportunity to clear his little brother's name. It's fine. Look at how scared you are. Enlin handed a blue jade pendant to Yang Lingqian before saying, I'm going to scout the surroundings first. I've already injected a wisp of my divine sense into this jade pendant. If there's an emergency, crush this jade pendant, and I'll rush over immediately. Yang Lingqian gripped the jade pendant tightly in her hand and nodded. Be careful. No one here can do anything to me. Unlin laughed. You mustn't get complacent. There are 5 return to void stage exalted immortals in the harem alone. Yang Lingxian spoke in a panicked voice. As for the Immortal King Palace, it's said that there are over 100 return to void stage exalted immortals who are loyal to the Immortal King. In her heart, Unlin was just an ordinary return to void stage exalted immortal who liked to boast. In the face of the terrifying power of an Immortal King, he was far too insignificant, which was why she was so concerned. Don't worry, even if I encounter a Celestial King, I can still kill him with one sword strike. Unlin snorted coldly. Exalted Immortal Unlin is the best. Yang Lingxian nodded with a smile. However, she thought to herself, see, he's bragging again. I'll just pretend to play along. Oh, by the way, if you walk around with the other women in the palace, you can try to find out more about the meteorite that landed in the Kunlun Empire. Unlin continued. Yang Lingxian was given a fright upon hearing this, and her features paled slightly. Your target is that meteorite? Please don't be like this. Do you know how many top-tier powerful beings have died in the pursuit of that meteorite? Unlin held onto Yang Lingxian's slightly trembling hand with an earnest expression. Please trust me. Yang Lingxian panicked when she felt the warmth radiating from the back of her hand, and she nodded instinctively. All right, I trust you. Unlin transformed into mist again, and flew out the window. It was now evening, and the sun was setting. The spring light palace of the Immortal King Palace was decorated with lanterns and streamers. The vibrant spring scenery of the day had transformed into a vibrant night scene that was just as dazzling and mesmerizing. Unlin was not in the mood to enjoy the scenery. His main mission now was to find the Heavenly Tao fragment, and his secondary mission was to rescue the 2,000 trapped beauties. He had a harem of 3,000, but the system only wanted him to rescue 2,000 beauties. It looked like some of the women who truly wanted to throw themselves at the Immortal King were excluded. If he really did rescue all of the harem, then the difficulty level would increase countless times. No, even if he wanted to rescue 2,000 beauties and make them develop feelings of fondness toward him, it would still be as difficult as ascending to the heavens. He had to think of a better way. Unlin thought to himself as he stealthily made his way toward the core region of the Immortal King Palace. The Heavenly Tao fragment was extremely important, so it had to be hidden in the most secretive place. Cultivators from the Immortal King Palace came and went as they flew through the air. Unlin encountered over 1,000 cultivators at the spirit nurturing stage or above along the way, and there were even 3 return to void stage mighty figures among them. The harem was a fairly central place, and the area even more central than the harem was most likely the restricted area where Immortal King Feng Huia cultivated. The tallest triangular pagoda over 10,000 feet tall in the center should be where the Immortal King Palace holds meetings. There are very rich vital energy fluctuations behind it, and the spiritual aura of heaven and earth is extremely concentrated there. That should be where the Immortal King cultivate. Unlin slowly approached the pagoda in his white mist form. However, he soon stopped in his tracks. Unlin continued to unleash his divine inspection technique in order to keep an eye on the invisible restrictive spell formations around him. At this moment there was a blue, spherical formation enshrouding a black, rectangular building. Extremely terrifying energy fluctuations were emanating from that rectangular building. Not only is this an isolation barrier, but it's also a killing formation. Not only that, but if the spell formation is broken, it can also send out an alarm to the entire Immortal King Palace at an extremely fast speed. Unlin's expression became grave for the first time. Also, this formation has gathered the power of the entire Kunlun city. That's the power of an entire nation, and if it were to erupt, its power would be truly unfathomable. It wasn't that he couldn't break the formation, but if he did, he would immediately be discovered by Immortal King Feng Huia, and a battle would be unavoidable. As such, the harem mission would become extremely difficult to complete. Aside from that, Feng Wuya had countless backup plans in the Immortal King Palace, so Enlin couldn't guarantee victory. It would be best if he could drag Feng Wuya out of the Immortal King Palace for another battle. Now is not a good time to strike. Enlin thought to himself for a moment before coming to a conclusion. Just as he was surveying his surroundings, the blue formation suddenly tremored violently. Then, an opening appeared in a certain direction, from which a suffocating power surged forth in a frenzy. A thin man in a black robe with slightly pale skin slowly made his way out. His terrifying aura had only just proliferated before it was completely withdrawn. Each and every step he took created a black lotus flower on the ground, creating a beautiful sight to behold. There were two Return to Void stage exalted immortals beside the man. One of them was a middle-aged man in a suit of colorful armor, and his aura was vast and powerful. The other was an exquisitely beautiful woman with a seductive figure. The woman pointed a finger at the air, and a series of portraits appeared in the air. Immortal King, you must be working hard in your cultivation. I've selected a few dozen outstanding newcomers for you. I hope you'll have a pleasant night, the woman said with a dainty smile. The man's eyes narrowed slightly as he looked up at the images in the air before settling on three portraits. Enlin's heart jolted with shock. He discovered that one of the portraits was none other than Yang Lingqian. Chapter 1361. There was a very good chance that Yang Lingqian would be chosen by that man. The thin man in the black robe with slightly pale skin was most likely the most powerful being on the Divine Source continent, Immortal King Feng Wuya. Right now, he was hesitating about who he was going to sleep with tonight. Enlin's heart also began to tense up. If he chose Yang Lingqian, then he would definitely have to save her. After all, Yang Lingqian had risked her life to infiltrate the harem for him. If he saved Yang Lingqian, then his harem plans would definitely be disrupted. However, there was still a 66% chance that Yang Lingqian wouldn't be chosen. He could only hope that her luck was better. I want these two. Feng Wuya pointed at the two women on the screen. Enlin. What happened to choosing one of the three? Why did he suddenly choose two? He suddenly felt like he was still too naive and couldn't keep up with Feng Wuya's train of thought. However, the only fortunate thing was that Feng Wuya didn't choose Yang Lingqian out of the two women. He chose Yang Lingqian. Wasn't just lucky, she was extremely lucky. She didn't look very safe either. The other two women weren't even as beautiful as her. Enlin thought to himself for a moment before assigning this to the Immortal King's unique hobbies. The woman beside him immediately bowed with a smile. Yes, Yan-ji will arrange this right away. The woman tore open a spatial rift and left. Feng Wuya stood on the spot for a long while before suddenly raising his head, and a terrifying aura erupted from his body in the form of black ripples. He roared, "Stop hiding! I know you're here!" His voice was like a clap of thunder, and Enlin's heart jolted upon hearing this. His mist immortal technique had been discovered? But why wasn't Feng Wuya looking toward where he was hiding? Was he so arrogant that he didn't even spare him a glance? Enlin had a nagging feeling that something was amiss, so he didn't reveal himself. Everything became extremely silent. After a short while, the man in the colorful armor was confused. Immortal King? Feng Wuya shook his head. I'm fine. It's just that I have a nagging feeling that someone is observing me from the shadows. The man smiled. Lord Immortal King, your cultivation is exceedingly high. How could there be a cultivator who could secretly observe you without you noticing? You're worrying too much. Feng Wuya nodded in agreement. Xinglong, you stay outside the meteorite mystic area. The man half knelt on the ground and bowed his head respectfully. Understood. Secretly, Enlin heaved a sigh of relief. It really is a trap. This guy is too cautious. He's already the leader of the world, but he's still so paranoid. Yan Ji and Xinglong were both returned to Void final stage mighty figures, so they were not to be underestimated. Feng Wuya was making his way toward the Spring Light Palace, and Enlin hesitated momentarily before deciding to follow him. The secret place of the meteorite mentioned by the Immortal King should be the black square building inside the formation. There was a high probability that there was a fragment of the heavenly way inside. With that, Enlin had a safe plan. The sun sank below the horizon and night fell. Enlin could see that there were 2 moons in the sky, one of which was holy and pristine, while the other was crimson and sinister. They appeared to be completely different, but they also seemed to be in harmony with one another. He fell into deep thought upon seeing this. If the battle between the 2 moons on the Taichu continent was a battle between Tao integration stage powerhouses, then what was the battle between the 2 moons on the Divine Source continent? He could sense that the 2 moons in the sky could project the power of the moon, which meant that they weren't just projections. Could it be that these 2 worlds are connected? Is this because of the fragment of the heavenly way on the Taichu continent? Enlin was a little perplexed, but he could only repress his confusion and follow Feng Wuya in silence. Feng Wuya entered the Spring Light Palace, and many beautiful women were already leaning against the windows. They were all looking at the man making his way toward them with curiosity, passion, fear, and unease in their eyes, as well as an indescribably complex look in their eyes. In any case, all of the beauties in the harem seemed to have different attitudes toward Feng Wuya. The exquisitely beautiful Yen Ji stepped out of thin air with a dainty smile on her face. "Immortal King, those 2 concubines are already waiting for you. You can go over to them at any time." Feng Wuya nodded with a thoughtful expression as he looked at the alluring Yen Ji. "Yen Ji, do you want to come with me?" Yen Ji faltered slightly upon hearing this before a seductive smile appeared on her face. "I won't be coming, hee. Don't forget what kind of cultivation method I'm cultivating, Your Majesty. If my purine body is destroyed by you, you're going to lose a powerful ally." Feng Wuya was still a little reluctant to give up. "Then when are you going to let me have a taste of your harem of over 1,000 beautiful female cultivators?" That's not a problem. We'll talk about it after I've had enough intimacy with them." A seductive smile appeared on Yen Ji's face. "I'll be taking my leave now. I have to go and enjoy my harem as well." Yen Ji transformed into a ball of flames and disappeared on the spot. Feng Wuya was a little disappointed, but he still made his way toward his own palace. Enlin was still digesting the conversation between the 2 of them, and he felt like there was too much information for him to process. He could somewhat understand a man having a harem of 3,000 beauties, but what the hell was this Yen Ji having a harem of 1,000 beauties as well? Were lesbians allowed to have a harem as well? He was suddenly feeling a little sorry for the male cultivators of this world. How many beauties had been plundered by these 2? Enlin grumbled as he drifted into Feng Wuya's palace. 2 beautiful women were trembling uncontrollably on Feng Wuya's bed, and one of them had tears in her eyes, clearly indicating that she had just been crying. Perhaps they had also been forced to come here by the Immortal King's envoy in the same manner as Yang Lingqian. Feng Wuya walked into his palace, and an excited light flashed through his eyes at the sight of the frightened and aggrieved women, and he quickly made his way toward the 2 women. Enlin hesitated momentarily before deciding to observe for a while longer. "We pay our respects to the Immortal King. We pay our respects to the Immortal King." The 2 women hurriedly extended respectful salutes. "Ha. No need for formalities." Feng Wuya stripped off his clothes before pouncing toward the 2 trembling beauties on his bed. "Relax, beauties. I'm going to give you an extremely enjoyable night." Feng Wuya began to strip off his own clothes as he spoke, leaving only a pair of underpants on. Then, he began to caress the 2 women's clothes at the same time. Soon, a pair of pristine, fair, and supple bodies began to appear before him. Feng Wuya caressed and kneaded their bodies to his heart's content, and the 2 women moaned and moaned in response. The 2 women were both embarrassed and enraged, and tears welled up in their eyes. However, They didn't dare to resist Feng Wuya's immortal might and could only endure it in silence. And Lin couldn't bear to watch any longer, and he was just about to flee from this place. However, he soon discovered something important, and he was rooted to the spot. He felt like he had discovered the immortal king's biggest secret.